first item on the work session is the vacancy fund request. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Gall to set up this conversation.
Hello, Dr. Malpack on board and listening staff and community members. As has been reported, due to the number of vacancies that have existed over this last year, we have some funds for us to reallocate. We have just worked with both the DAC budget subcommittee and with the executive cabinet to present a very short list this evening of what we believe time-sensitive opportunities for the district. There is a much larger list, which was what was hung and presented to the DAC budget subcommittee, but we went through that with not a prioritization as much as a timeliness of if we could take advantage of that money now through reappropriation with Laura Horonic and team, then we would be able to reap those benefits sooner. The general premise of what we felt about these dollars, I just want to make a bit of a comparison. Earlier in the year, I believe in September and October, we were working with what we called the Fund Balance Task Force, which was a significant amount of money that had accumulated over the years due to both understaffing and some other savings that had come through the COVID era. The decision and the direction of the board at that time was for us to make priority use of those dollars on achievement, enrollment, and engagement. And although we continue to use those same lenses on these vacancy fund requests, we also kind of asked ourselves the larger question of how do we use these dollars in a way to give back to the very people who have done the work of the district while being short-staffed. So you will see some things in here that you might ask yourself, well, why that now? And we've just really been thinking hard about how is it that we alleviate some of the challenges that some of our staff have had. And I think you'll see that more in the overall spreadsheet. But I did want to frame that the guiding lens that we used was how is it that we celebrate our staff and our community in a way that does also contribute to our academic achievement, our enrollment, and our engagement. But we were really thinking about many of these dollars are saved because positions weren't filled, and positions that aren't filled means that people in positions, neighboring positions, are often working even harder to ensure that we're doing all that we can for all our students' success. So I will ask Laura Horonic to come on. And I think probably the best way to do this is I'll let Laura talk a little bit about the overall amount of money that we think will be available and how this is a small amount that she feels doesn't present any risk. And then I think we'll allow the board members to ask us if they have individual line items as compared to us going line by line.
Sure. So at the date that we prepared the mid-year budget, we ran a summary of all of the positions that were budgeted and which ones were vacant on that specific day. We identified about $20 million of money that was tied up in those positions. Now, unless we cut the positions, this is non-recurring money. We spent about $3 million in non-recurring items at the mid-year budget, and now we're presenting another $2.8 million for immediate funding right now. This still leaves us plenty of opportunity to fund non-recurring items for next year, as this will roll into fund balance. So any of the items that were on the original proposed list that are not included for immediate funding will still be considered for funding included in next year's budget.
So, Ms. Horonic, are you done with your presentation?
Yeah, I hung the documents. We can certainly pull those up and share the screen if that helps people. I believe all of the requesters are online that can talk about them if there are questions about specific items.
Okay, let's not pull it up on the screen right now. Then if you pull it up, I can see which board directors are asking which questions. So with that, Chief Odom, do you have anything to add to this conversation, or I can open it up for the board?
I do not. But
okay.
Thank you for offering.
Okay, thank you. I see Director Nelson's hand go up first. So I think there are, just before I come to you, Director Nelson, there are roughly about 10 to 15 requests that are there. So instead of going line item by line item, if there is any specific items that are in there that the request that they are making that you don't agree with, or you have more questions on or concerns about, then you can bring it up at this point to ask follow-up questions. And then collectively, maybe there are some items where we can give a thumbs up and move on without having to discuss it much further. We also have the DAC budget subcommittee report out there. So I want to thank the DAC budget subcommittee. And when you listen to the conversations that they have, it's much more in depth, and they provide a healthy feedback to us based on, and that subcommittee has got all stakeholder groups in there, including parents, community members, and staff at various levels. So it's good to hear their feedback. Their report was attached. If we had any follow-up question to DAC budget subcommittee, we can also follow up with them at a later point in time. Director Nelson.
Can you clarify how much money will be remaining pending these requests that we are reviewing tonight if we were to approve this 2.8 million tonight?
So roughly 14 million. I mean, we're trying to hit a moving target. On the date that we ran that report, we identified vacancies, but some of those may have been filled since, or some of them may have been filled prior to that. So it's kind of a moving target, but we have so much fund balance at this point. If we're a little bit over or a little bit under, I am not concerned about the overall budget.
Thank you. I just couldn't write quite fast enough earlier when you were throwing out those numbers that we have already spent some of the funding at the mid-year budget. That's a good reminder. And I just want to stress that importance that we recognize that this funding came from vacancies, and we want to compensate our staff well for the hard work they're doing. And the previous fund balance process that we went through this fall, we already set aside close to $9 million that we will, during negotiations, and as the board is able to discuss compensation in the future, that will be taken into consideration. And then typically this money would carry over into the fall. That's how District 11 has operated in the past. And I have come around, Superintendent Gall and Mr. Melpacum have helped me kind of come around to realizing that we should be putting this funding to work and not sitting on it. And so I have asked that we not look at spending all of it today, but that, these urgent needs we can put to work. And then in the future, we can look at all of the requests and keeping into consideration rewarding our staff for the hard work they're doing, not just next year, but in future years as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. So now I'll get to my actual questions.
Okay, hang on a minute, Director Nelson. I will come back to you with your actual questions.
Okay.
Director Jurgensen, do you have any thoughts on the overall process? Go ahead.
Just to clarify, after what Ms. Hronik said, having about 14 million left over, I'd like to just make sure I understand that when we talked about right-sizing the district, I don't know how long ago in a work session, of moving from a 5-year rolling average to a 3-year or a more accurate year-to-year funding based on the needs we have with the staff we have, we set aside some money for Mr. Gall and his team to accomplish. And with the communication that Mr. Gall would find another chunk of money to help with that, is the chunk of money that we're setting aside to help us right size the district going to also be taken from this 14 million?
No, that mismatch is still set aside from the original fund balance task force.
Okay, that was a good point to make, because that was in the back of my mind as I'm reading through all of this and saying, all right, I know we set aside this. I like that we're right sizing the district. I want to make sure that this was still some extra money here. So that makes it a little bit easier for me to maybe, when I looked through everything, to prioritize some things that now that I have that understanding. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Jurgensen. So just to understand this too, Mr. Hronik, this once the board gives a thumbs up for all or some of these requests or most of these requests, this will have to come at a board meeting and the board gets to appropriate that money and direct it to the spending that we identify, correct?
So the money's already appropriated as salary budget. So I will bring it as just a straight action item. There will be no non-action as a budget transfer out of salaries into whatever the appropriate account strings are for these items.
Okay. And you plan on doing that next week? Is that the goal at this time?
Yes, if that's the wish of the board.
Okay, thank you. So that helps us understand where we are at. So we have several requests out there. When I looked at the list, there was about 15 of them up there for a total cost of about $2.8 million. If there are items that are particularly there are more questions on, then we can start that conversation at this time. So I just want to see which are the items first that I hope all the board members have taken a time to look at the list of requests that have been made. So if there are items that do not need to be talked about, then we can move on from that without having to spend a lot of time. So I'm going to open that up that way and then circle back to the items that we do need to talk about. All 02, which is additional funds for 2 contracted nurses with Solient Health. Is that, can I look as a thumbs up if the board wants to have questions on that, or can we move on that? Okay, I see all thumbs up. So all 02, there is no further discussion on that. All 05, are there discussions on that? Okay, so then I see some nods in there. So let's circle back on all 05. All 06, the planetarium. Are there questions on that one? Or are we ready to go forth on that one? Okay. Director Jurgensen or Director Daniels, do you have questions on all 06, or are you okay with going on that?
I have questions about 06.
Okay, then don't give a thumbs up. If you don't have questions, then give a thumbs up.
Oh,
Okay, so we'll circle back on all 05 and all 06. All 07, the VAPA drama for middle schools. Are there questions on that? Yes or no? Or are we okay with the thumbs up on moving all 07? Okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Director Daniels, I didn't see a thumbs up, but I'm going to, since it's the will of the board. Do you have questions on all 07?
I'm trying to toggle between all of the panes. So
Okay.
as you're moving, it's
Okay.
really trying to, and notes and all that.
Okay.
I don't have a question on it as much as I do like just wanting to make sure that what the DAC saw and what we're doing is going to truly assist in making these programs work.
Okay.
I have a question about 07.
Okay, you do. So then we'll
Yes.
circle back on that. Okay. All 08, are there any questions on the international travel one?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll circle back on that. BS06, replace custodial equipment. You have questions on that? Okay, Director Jurgensen has questions on that. So we'll circle back on that.
No, Director Melpacum, would it be maybe easier so that you're not having to figure out how many ones to go back to? Let's discuss all ALL ones before you go into the BS ones. Then we
Okay.
can kind of say that that's all
Yeah.
done.
Okay, we can do that way. That's great. So let's start with all 02. I got all thumbs up. All 05 is the Create Shared Science Lab at Galileo and Jack Swigert. There were some questions on that. Which board director wants to go first? Okay, go ahead, Director Nelson.
I wanted a little bit more background information on this. Is this request coming from the staff at the schools?
We're going to ask Tamara to jump online here, but just no, yes and no. Schools are trying to find ways to differentiate themselves, particularly in the middle school space. I see Darian Founds is up there as well, so I'd love to be able to hear him opine. We had asked the schools to come forward with, what do you need to make your school special and different from an enrollment and an achievement perspective? And I'll generalize this, but what I didn't really want to spend money on was building brand new kitchens in 5 different middle schools to have an earlier pipeline for our food nutrition services CTE program. How do we excite kids into other things that we have not been able to really make a middle school to high school connection yet? So Tamara, are you okay if I just jump right to Darian because I see his picture up? Mr. Founds.
Hi, good evening, Director Nelson. Thank you for the question. And as far as the request goes, what we're looking at doing is renovating the science lab at both Galileo and Swigert. So it's a known fact that our facilities are aging, and one area where that's particularly evident is in our science laboratories across the district. So what I'm proposing with using these funds for is creating a shared laboratory space. So creating a model laboratory that meets the next generation science standards. Like Mr. Gall said, it gets students excited about science, gets students excited about STEM. So both schools do have an available laboratory space that's basically just sitting idle right now. It's just being used for storage. So what we'd like to do is to turn that into a kind of a light remodel. This funding would not kind of completely renovate the space, but it would provide a lot of extra resources for that department to share. Some of the funding, most of the funding would go to furniture and laboratory equipment. So the furniture is top-notch, high-quality furniture that you would find in a laboratory at UCCS or at Pikes Peak State College. So it's not the flimsy kind of particle board veneer type furniture. So this is furniture that would last up to 50 years, according to Flynn Scientific. And then the safety equipment would be state of the art. And then we would also infiltrate the laboratory with all of the equipment necessary for a next generation science lab, which requires students to do hands-on learning, doing investigations and things like that. So, and it would be a shared space. So if you can envision the way that universities tend to structure their science departments, where there's like lecture halls, and then there's different laboratory spaces for different needs. So we would do that on a smaller scale, obviously, for a middle school, but we would have the 3 classrooms, a 6th grade science classroom, a 7th grade science classroom, and an 8th grade science classroom. And then there would be this shared lab space that those 3 teachers and those students would share, that would have updated equipment and resources and so forth.
Okay, so I have a comment and then a question. As a district, this kind of comes alongside the AMP conversation that we'll be having later. Galileo outside the building says it's a school of math and sciences. There's also a sign that says it's Avid. When I toured that school last spring, I asked the principal, how much is it math and sciences? Is it in name only, or are you actively pursuing that? And the response I got was, it's pretty much in name only. So as a district, we need to decide, are we going to double down and make Galileo a school of math and sciences? And if we are, this makes complete sense. And this is a very exciting item to put money towards. I mean, I love it. But I just want to make sure that we're putting that this equipment and supplies into the building where there will be buy-in, not only from the leadership level, but also from the staff within the school. So my question then is, are there staff in the school that are wanting this and that this will be utilized to the fullest extent possible? Is there buy-in at the school level for both schools?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll speak to Galileo first. To go back to some historical context, when that was East Middle School and it was closed for a number of years, and then it was relaunched as the Galileo School of Math and Science. At that time, the school was kind of flooded with resources for laptops and other types of technology, but over time, there wasn't ongoing funding to support that math and science and tech oriented model. So some of that has fallen off. So that's kind of what you spoke to, Director Nelson, with the, the in name only effect. So the Galileo science team, they already have moved all of their science stuff into this extra classroom. So unfortunately, the reason that there's this extra laboratory space is because of declining enrollment. They have had some attrition in their science department, but they have already actually moved all of their equipment that they currently have into that room. And it's just kind of waiting for that opportunity to kind of revitalize it and make it something, reimagining the space. So instead of making it just a storage room, turning it into something that students and teachers can use. And then moving over to Swigert, they also have that Aerospace Academy naming to their school too. And a similar thing is going on there. They used to have the moon-based missions there. They used to have quite a number of simulators and things like that. And all of that was kind of funded through a partnership with the Space Foundation. And then as that partnership kind of started to fizzle out, so did the funding too. So unfortunately, a lot of that equipment got kind of outdated and just sat idly and then eventually was removed from the school. So what we'd like to do with this funding is just to kind of reinvigorate some of that STEM funding and STEM support back into both of those schools to reinvigorate it. As far as the desire from Swigert, I haven't had a chance to meet with the science team yet on that, but I have had conversations with the administration team there. And they are excited about this opportunity to have kind of a light remodel of some of their science space over at the school.
I guess my final ask would be that as we look at spending this money, that the staff in the school are very involved in deciding what the needs are. Because as I read the description, it sounds to me like Flynn Scientific provided kind of, here's what is typically in a lab and here's what's going to be needed and here's the estimate of the cost. But our staff know best what they're actually going to use. And so I don't want us to just say, here's all the supplies, and then it's not something that the staff are actually going to be using. So I would just ask that they be very involved in saying, we need this many microscopes and we don't need that, even though Flynn Scientific has it on their list, because we actually aren't even going to use it. And so that we're just being very good stewards of the funding and not piling up supplies that won't be utilized. And that's all my questions on this one.
We couldn't agree with you more, Director Nelson, and specifically on the AMP piece of this. We have to start identifying our schools and giving them the chance to differentiate in a way. Darian has proven himself to be what I call the purple unicorn. He is both an excellent administrator at central office and deeply rooted in what happens in classrooms. He is always in classrooms. Matter of fact, spent the first several weeks of the year filling in vacancies for science teachers across middle schools. So if anyone knows where there is opportunity for us to accelerate achievement in the classroom that we can then attach to enrollment opportunities by matching the names of our schools with our AMP, I think I have full faith and confidence in Darian's recommendation here.
Okay, well, thank you for stepping in when we had that need, Darian, in the schools. And
I was happy to do it.
And yeah, if we decide as a district that we want to help these schools be School of Math and Science, I'm all for it. I just want to make sure we're having those higher level conversations, kind of taking a step back to see, is that really what we want to do for the district?
Okay, thank you, Director Nelson. And Darian, thank you for being the purple unicorn. Any other board questions on this line item? I have one question. If no other board members have any other questions, where are other middle schools in having such similar science lab and equipment? The reason these two schools were picked were because their equipment were more outdated? Where are other schools?
The reason I started with these two schools was just to start small with kind of a pilot model. Also, I work with Galileo very closely this year. And like I said, they've already piled their stuff into that room, and I was just asking them, why is all your stuff just piled up in that room? So that kind of started that conversation. Also, both of the schools have kind of been dealing with enrollment issues over the last years, and unfortunately, that's why that space is there. Best case scenario is I hope that 5 years from now, we're taking down that space because they got an additional science teacher back into their team, and we're trying to come up with a plan B in a few years. And then also both of those schools are on turnaround status. So providing some extra support to our schools that need some additional help and resources in moving forward. And what I hope to do is to show that this is a great model for how to set up science rooms and science departments. Because if you try to stock every single science classroom, what happens is the resources get watered down, and every teacher is basically under-resourced for what they need. If you can flood 1 or 2 laboratory spaces with everything needed for a high quality, life science lab or physical science lab that they share, and they could just use a shared calendar for that. That's a great model for being more efficient with resources and finances, and also giving students and teachers, access to really high quality equipment and science experiences.
Great, thank you. And you answered part of my question out there that this is why these two schools were selected. And one of it, we are going to be looking at all these through the lens of student outcomes and student enrollment. Just want to circle back on, so do all other middle schools have the necessary equipment, or is this something that in future years you want to upgrade the shared lab space at other middle schools too?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is use these two schools as a proof of concept to say that this model works and is not only a good use of funding from the district, but also a great way to improve student learning. So this is kind of step 1 in that proof of concept. And I hope I come back to you in a year or a couple years to say, this is what we want to do in all of our middle schools, and also taking a look at our high schools too. So as our facilities age and there's not a immediate kind of funding structure to build brand new schools, I think this is a way that we can kind of up our game in the science departments as a kind of a stopgap until we can maybe build new facilities in the future.
Okay, thank you, sir. Seeing no further questions, is the board comfortable giving a thumbs up on this, moving this? Okay, I see thumbs up on all of these things, so this is good to go. The next one is all 06, which is the planetarium at Mitchell High School. Director Bankers, I'll start with you first. You had a question.
I did. I had just one question. Since the planetarium is a set aside, I'm wondering if someone is going to be hired, or if existing staff is going to take care of the scheduling and the maintenance and the upkeep, all the things that are involved in maintaining a standalone facility. That was my only question.
Tamara, do you have an answer to that? Or we might have to get a follow-up.
I think Darian can speak to this as well, but we met with the team and administrative staff and did a personal tour of the current state, listened to what the school was trying to accomplish with the planetarium and their plan for rollout and use as a school, and then the potential for possibilities as just a real community space or space that could be accessed. So I know they have dedicated staff and a plan for moving forward with use. They just need the planetarium to be updated and to realize what it was previously for the community, but what it can become based on, the architects really put that building at Mitchell. They created that school with the planetarium there. It wasn't something that was retrofitted. So it would be, it's a testament to the school for wanting to really get that back and operating again, and to Darian for working with the school to see that happen.
What I'm hearing, So what I'm hearing you say is that existing staff is going to feel the responsibility of running a successful planetarium?
Yeah, and Darian, you can come in here, but they are definitely for programming at their school. They have plans for how that'll look, and then we'll continue to work on plans for what that means for outside use. Darian, do I have that correct? You've had the most recent conversations.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. So right now I'm working with the project manager at Mitchell High School on this process. So myself and Herb have zero experience remodeling a planetarium, so we're learning as we go, and we're out visiting. We're going to start visiting other planetariums in the Pikes Peak region. But yeah, the long-term vision would be that the science department, along with the administration team, would be kind of the shared leadership with that, and we're also trying to loop in the LTE. So the model that we've used previously for that planetarium is one person in the district has been the owner of kind of being the champion, being the maintainer, and being the facilitator for that. That person no longer works at Mitchell. So the drawback to going with that one person model is if that person leaves, you're kind of starting from ground zero. So what we're trying to do with revamping the planetarium, we're also trying to build the capacity of the staff. So we're trying to get as many people involved, so that way this project and the long-term viability of the planetarium doesn't hinge on this one employee in the district moving forward.
But it's important to note that the school, before we even asked to tour and see the planetarium, had already had plans for just the minimal updates that would need to happen so that they could utilize it. So this is really, they want to be able to use this and use it effectively.
Okay, thank you.
Is that where the $3,000 that could possibly come from curriculum and instruction? Is that what they were thinking in requesting in order to do those minimal upgrades? Somewhere in the form, it had talked about alternative funding, and it said something about asking for $3,000 from curriculum and instruction. And that's okay. I'm fine with the answers I have. I'm good.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from and the concern that maybe Director Bankus was trying to address is that this is not going to come at a later point in time with additional FTE request, right?
Yeah, I can't envision needing a full-time employee to manage the planetarium. I think we could do that in-house with our existing staff and just come up with a strategic plan to manage that and utilize it to the best of our ability.
Okay, thank you, Director Jurgensen.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Mr. Found's statement there, when you look at the request, it says, once minimum use of 1 day per quarter in school and 2 days per year out of school. So yeah, I would hope we would not have a full-time position to manage 6 minimum days on a planetarium. But my other question was, off and on within the request, if you read through it, it mentions software, but then doesn't specifically mention buying new software with this renovation. So I would assume if you're doing all the work, you're going to also have new software, and that software could probably not be just science-based, but probably a lot of cross-curricular activities that multiple different subjects could use. So is this including software with it?
Yes, what this would start with, I might get my acronym incorrectly here, but there's a GUI iPad console, and that basically serves as the application that allows you to project these planetarium shows. And I definitely see some interdisciplinary connections, not just running astronomy shows in there, but also looking at the other departments in the school to see how we can incorporate, geography and geology and other things like that into it.
Okay, great.
Director Nelson.
I had a similar question about the FTE and not just managing the planetarium and the calendar, but also like giving the tours. And if an elementary school is coming into the planetarium, who is going to be leading those third graders through what they're seeing? And I remember going to the planetarium when I was in elementary school. I texted my mom the other day asking if it was at Mitchell High School, and she said yes. I didn't know back then it was at that location, but I have very vivid memory of being at a planetarium and one of the teachers leading us through it. So I love this request, but I did want to ask about the other funding opportunities that was listed. How much have we looked into partnering with a corporation? We have so much in Colorado Springs as far as military and aerospace type companies, and then also grants. And just before we spend this money, can we look into that in more depth?
Yes, we have some preliminary discussions with some of our aerospace and STEM companies in the region. We don't have anybody that has kind of committed to writing us a big check at this point, but we do have some interest in the community to just learn more about it and just see what the possibilities are. So what I'm hoping is that this funding request here would at least get the planetarium up to 21st century standards with the software and hardware upgrades. And then that would be an immediate kind of fix for it to get it functional and get kids in there. And then moving forward to look at maybe some big corporate sponsors that could write us a check, or to look at grant opportunities to really bring this into being one of the premier planetariums in the Pikes Peak region.
How many planetariums are in the region?
To my knowledge, there might be some kind of private ones out there, but the Space Foundation has a planetarium, Challenger Learning Center has a planetarium, and then Mitchell High School has a planetarium. So
Okay.
it's a small
And the Air
list
Force
for sure.
Academy.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Benkes. The Air Force Academy, of course. And they just recently went through a remodel. So their technology was quite outdated, similar to Mitchell's. So Miss Jordan, she's the project manager at Mitchell, and she's been in contact with Air Force Academy. So we're looking to get up there and see what they've done, and just to learn what does it take to update and remodel a planetarium, because they just did it, I want to say, in the last 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so thank you. I do see a few more hands up there, but I just want to remind that we want to keep this presentation moving along. Otherwise, we are going to be here till about 9 o'clock. Director Ott, I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I think that approving the request as is probably the way to go, and then building onto it with the grants, because once you can get back to the basics and establish that we are serious about this, I think it helps us down the road. And I think having a stipend might be a good idea in the future as well for a person who would be supporting the planetarium. When I look at the how often we would have people in there, I think it's not enough. I think we should have field trips in there all the time. We should have once or twice a month where we have public programs. I know like Director Nelson, my own high school did that. And there was a monthly program guaranteed, and it was wonderful for the community. And I think the demand would be there for scouting troops, the Astronomical Society. And so those were some of my observations. And then as we're, like I said, going out and getting those grants and keeping it supported. Thanks.
Director Loma.
I was, we had D11 had a working agreement with the Space Foundation years past with Swigert, when Swigert was tied to that, and I'm not sure how he lost it or whatever. And I know they had an area back in Swigert that had a lot of space stuff, robotic stuff. Did we lose all that, or maybe you don't know? But I like the idea of a planetarium. It's a good thing. I've never been to one. When I was a kid, I was too busy running away from activities. Well, that's another story. But I like the idea of a planetarium.
Yeah, so we're reestablishing our relationship with the Space Foundation. President Malpacum and I met there. We've had a couple of follow-on conversations, and we're looking for that relationship to go everywhere from elementary all the way up to CTE and high school opportunities. And so we're super excited about that. Thanks for reminding us, Director Loma.
Yeah, so thank you. Seeing no further questions, Director Hart, I think you don't have any further. I still see your hand up, so that's why. Okay. What I'm hearing from the board members here, this is a value add. I'll ask for a thumbs up soon. Let's take advantage of it, that this is the opportunity to get our elementary school students into that space. Let's have a lot of field trips out there. Let's use this as an enrollment opportunity, not only at Mitchell, but all of our other schools. So with that, show a thumbs up for this planetarium. Okay, I see all the board members giving a thumbs up on that. Okay, moving on to the next one, which is the VAPA. Secretary Bankus, I think you said you had a question on the.
I do. I just wanted to make sure that the funds that were allocated for the drama departments at the middle schools was going to be dispersed or dispensed for performances. One of the things I notice is in some of our schools, it's very hard to hear the actors and actresses on stage. And I saw this money come through and I wondered, so is this money solely so that we can put on performances, which I thought was the intent? Or can this money be diverted to say, well, we'd have a better performance if we had better microphone system? And that's my question.
The intent, I'll let Laura Lee jump in here, but the intent was for our families to have to stop fundraising to put on performances for middle school drama. I'll let Laura Lee comment on what an additional amount of money would be required to get that level of technology for audio support. Laura Lee.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to talk about this evening. The intent for each of the schools is to have up to $4,500 at their disposal. And in an ideal state, which is the training that we're going to put on for all the theater teachers in August, is to offer the opportunity to do a musical, a play, and then 1/3 performance, whether that is Shakespeare or an improv troupe. It gives them some kind of third performance that you don't usually get in middle school. And then if they want to do additional performances, that's an option, but it would be through a school's budget.
Okay, thank you. So as long as I think what I'm hearing from another board director, maybe it was Secretary Bankus, that this money is tied into that we are going to have some student performances out there. Do all schools, all middle schools have a drama teacher or a drama program?
All currently have FTE for them. There's one right now that doesn't, but we're hoping to grab a couple of the UNC grads for from their job fair because we've got some spaces to fill, but we all have.
Great. And as long as this funding is to attract our parents back into our schools to watch our students perform and celebrate those performances. And with that, the word of mouth is going to go to neighbors and community members that, hey, our middle schools have an active drama program. And then that is going to further help increase enrollment in our schools. So this funding is tied into schools having those live performances with our students participating. Director Nelson.
So this request, I guess this probably is a question more for Mr. Gall. It's utilizing one-time funding, but I imagine we want to make this sustainable and continue it in years to come. So are you already intending to build this in the budget for future years?
Yes, I would like to see this to become a sustainable item. This request really came much earlier in the year. Matter of fact, we were at the same event. It was at North Middle School somewhere around October or November. And when I saw that parents were having to fundraise in order to support the wonderful performance we saw that brought together both students, staff, families, and community, I thought of the 600 some odd $million total budget that we have with grant and dollars included, we should be able to say, here's $5,000 per free per year per middle school. So that was the intent. And yes, these are non-recurring dollars, but we said that and we did nothing about it. So if you want to have a spring performance right now in a middle school, you need to go fundraise for that.
So will the schools be able to use this money the rest of this school year then, or is this for next school year?
Laura Lee, I believe they could use it this spring as soon as Laura could move it over.
Yes, they can use it as soon as the spring.
And just since I'm on the same train of thought for the sustainability piece, that I have that same question for the world travel request that's coming. Just yes, you are intending to build that into the budget for sustainability in future years, or?
I want to see what the feedback from the community is and the success of the program. We'd like to connect this to both our world language rollout, and that will come in the subsequent part of the work session here at about 11:30 tonight, where we'll be talking about world language becoming a high school requirement. And also, I've shared this before, when I was in DC, from an enrollment perspective, every junior in high school had the chance to travel internationally, whether they were in a world language program or not. And that came out of the general fund. We certainly had a much healthier general fund position than we do here, but it became a huge enrollment opportunity when you would say, come to high school and DC public schools and travel the world. And so we've walked kids through getting their passports. And although it was more cultural based in DC to get kids that experience of traveling internationally, we thought there was a big opportunity here with the help of Claudette Murtha, who's on the line here, if we need any assistance, to matching this to our language development and ensuring that each one of our high school students is invested in understanding the value of foreign language. But I would like to be able to build this over time into a sustainable part of our budget. But I understand that money doesn't just fall out of the sky. So we'd like to use these non-recurring dollars for this summer to see if this is something that we believe can have legs within our system and would become a priority for our budget constraints going forward.
Okay, so let's wrap up the conversation on all 07 first, which is the VAPA. Do you guys have any more questions on VAPA middle school opportunity? Director Loma, do you have any on that one?
No, next one. No.
Next one. Okay, so with that, I think let's show by hands of thumbs up if we are good with the VAPA one. Okay, I see all thumbs up at this time. So that's good. Thank you for bringing this up. And I was at that performance that Superintendent Gall is talking about where the fundraising happened. So we want to see more performances at the school level. So I just want to insist again, if a school is not putting together these type of student performances, I hope we are not just allocating dollars to those schools, that this comes with the express intent purpose that teachers are going to involve our students and our community in putting together performances. And whether that's going to be used for props and costumes or improving their audio system, let the schools figure that out.
No show, no dough.
Yep. Moving on to all 8 international travel program for foreign language students. Do you want to add anything more to that topic? I see Claudette Murtha out there. Claudette, first, do you want to give a basic context, set this up, and then the board can ask questions?
Sure. Good evening, Superintendent Gall and the Board of Education. Thank you for allowing me to come here tonight and present this to you. Something that I think is very exciting for our district, and coming from a world language standpoint, probably one of the content areas, if not the most underfunded and underrepresented content area in our district, and how our world is changing so quickly into global economies and businesses that are really needing and wanting bilingual students. And we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of years implementing Spanish for Proficiency and Spanish language arts classes that are full at the schools where those are offered. We also have an intro to Spanish or proficiency class now at Swigert, very popular as well. And Seal of Biliteracy, which we started 2 years ago. We had 8 students graduate the first year. We had, I probably have to look at my notes from last year, about 26 kids last year, and this year I'm hoping to identify over 50 across our high schools that will graduate with the Seal of Biliteracy. So with study abroad, what's really important for students is to be able to reach the level of proficiency at an intermediate mid-level, and that would be able to speak, read, write, and listen, understand the language at a level where they're able to function in that language. And that's what Seal of Biliteracy really targets, is those kids that meet that criteria. So, and we have 4 language in a couple of middle schools. A lot of them start in high school and they get to their 3rd year and then they take the stamp test to see where they're at. It's a nationally normed test that's used across districts and military installations as well, businesses, corporations, to see where they're at proficiency wise. And sometimes we have students that don't quite make it. They need that extra boost, like for instance, like a study abroad or immersion type experience to get that boost. So we put together, I did some work. I worked with Mr. Gull on this last fall, this idea, and moving it forward to be able to take juniors who meet a certain criteria. We did have an application process that they went through to do a study abroad program. So it would be 2 weeks this summer at University of Oaxaca in Mexico. They get college credit for their studies. And then 2 weeks at a professional language school in southern France in Biarritz. And the students are very excited about it. We had applicants from all of our high schools, including Odyssey. Students are included this year. We had to be a little bit accommodating for some of the requirements because, for instance, at Mitchell, we don't even have a 3rd year of language yet at Mitchell. And Odyssey, because of the structure of the school, those kids will only have had equivalent to like a year or 2. Where at Palmer and Coronado and Doherty, it looks a little bit different. So yeah, that's where we're at. It's an immersion, so it's not a tour. We're not going to tour, castles and big cities and ride on a bus the whole 2 weeks. We're actually going and staying with the host families that have been vetted by organizations that are approved for us to work with. And they're going to be in school. They're going to be studying and learning language and culture. There's additional classes that they'll be taking, like culinary classes, getting to know the artisans in Oaxaca as well. So again, a super opportunity for our kids that have really stuck out those 3 years of language and really want to maybe do a double major or even a minor in language, or go on to a trade where language is valuable, to be bilingual, biliterate. So I can take questions, and Mr. Gall might have a little bit more to add to that. That was a little nutshell of some big ideas here. So
I appreciate Claudette, and that'll lead into some of the things you'll hear in the high school update, but we'll take questions on the specific vacancy fund request.
Director Loma.
Well, I think it's great, everything you said about the language, but I think it should be expanded beyond that, because not everybody needs to know a language. As part of my studies, I had to stay in the Philippines for 30 days and live in squalid conditions. Then I had to go to Indonesia for 30 days and live there. And the idea of just understanding culture, not necessarily language. We're Americans, we're in the greatest country in the world, but the whole world looks at us a little different than the way we look at the world. And we're kind of naive. They tend to pick up on us and we don't pick up on them. And so, although I agree that those involved in language should get involved, I like the idea of giving opportunity to all our students. I know the funding is not there, but I think we limit ourselves because you're going to have to be able to operate in a global world. And let's face it, not everybody's going to learn the language, but they're still going to have to operate. And fortunately, English is the prominent language globally, especially in business. So tying it just simply to language is probably a good start, but I think it could expand itself.
I think so too. And I've been having some conversations with some global organizations. There's a nonprofit based out of Singapore it's like a conglomerate of businesses, small and large, that submit a real world project to this nonprofit in Singapore. They bring students from all over the world. Some of them are in language schools, some of them are doing STEM or culinary, and the students have, it depends on the program length, but 2 to 3 weeks to solve this problem. And they're working with other kids from all over the world. So since this idea happened before COVID, and then COVID hit, and of course nobody was doing anything anywhere. So this is exciting that we're even looking at this possibility this summer. And then what's to come in the next couple of years is exciting as well. There are also some amazing opportunities in South America and Costa Rica to combine language or not, but with students who really want to study the environment. So like environmental studies, they're doing work on water samples and flora and fauna in the rainforest and the river systems. So there are lots of opportunities out there. There are lots of folks on the East Coast already doing a lot of this work, and I'm excited that our district is even looking at the possibility of starting to send some of our kids abroad. So, and you're right. That's how they're going to grow and be global citizens like we need.
Correct. Yeah, I haven't been able to go overseas to Asia because I had to rent. It's amazing to land in Asia. I had to rent a room for 10 days on my dime. I couldn't leave the room, and they would have to bring food to me until after 10 days, and I didn't kill myself or die from COVID, and then they would let you out. So, and it was an amazing thing that all over the Far East, you had to rent a room for 10 days and you couldn't leave your room, and you ordered food. They trapped you. It was like a prison in a hotel. So it's now it's different. It's open, which is praise the Lord. It's open. Thank you.
So thank you, Director Loma. And in one of the conversations, Superintendent Gall shared about how when he was working in Washington, D.C., every student had that opportunity to travel abroad. And that's kind of the vision that he wants to bring to. I don't want to jump the gun, and if Superintendent Gall wants to share that.
I already said it. That's the vision. We would love to be able to build it. We want to start here, see if we can get it. We decided that this was the summer of U. The letter U is in each month of the summer. In June, we'll do Summer Bridge. In July, we wanted to have a smaller international travel. And in August, we wanted to then do a jump start. So we didn't want it to be the summer where we were done at the end of May and we didn't come back till August. And we'll have a specific marketing campaign around that. But I can't say anything about it until I get the money.
Yeah, and hopefully this is something in 3 or 4 years' time, every high school student has the opportunity. And that's what is a selling point. You come to District 11 as a high school student, you get to travel abroad. Director Bankus.
Yes, I wanted to ask, as we fund this, if the students have any financial obligation. I noticed that in my lifetime that when someone has to put something of their own into an endeavor, it has more meaning, and hence my question.
Yeah, Dr. Bankus, thank you for that question. And that's something that I really thought about along with Mr. Gull and some others, the world language teachers and department chairs in our district. And there were a couple of things. The first one is that we do have a system where teachers can take students abroad, but it's you pay your own way trip. And students can go, some of them do fundraising, some of them their grandparents contribute or family members or whatever. But we also have a lot of students that have worked really hard to go the 3 years of language. And if they've stuck out a 3rd year of language and they're really committed to that, this is like an extra bonus for them. And then there's no financial obligation. So it's not keeping anybody from saying, well, I can't go because I can't afford to go. We did have an application process that was fairly rigorous. So they had to answer some essay questions. They had to turn in a letter of recommendation. We also looked at a GPA as far as behavior, different things like that were concerned. So they did have to go through an application, and there have been communications, since I sent the letters to them that this is what we're looking at. So there was an application process, and I'm excited about the kids that have applied to go. I don't have any hesitation about any of them. And of course, that's something that we have to look at as well, because I agree. Sometimes when we know that something is just given to us, then it's not as special. But I think that this is super special for them. It's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And to my knowledge, we're the only district in Colorado, maybe west of the Mississippi, I don't know, I'd have to do more research, that is even looking at this possibility, and especially compared to some of the districts on the East Coast. So, but that is something that's on my mind, and I will definitely keep an eye on that as we start this. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
So thank you. So moving on, I don't see any further questions. Is this a thumbs up on all 08? Okay, I see a thumbs up on this. So as far as all the 5 all requests that came in front of the board, we have a thumbs up, so this can move on and come in front of the board where we can approve it formally. And with the caveat that, hey, the way we are looking at it through this lens is this going to improve student enrollment primarily, and also provide a rich educational experience for our students. So let's market all these new opportunities that we have for our students and the community. And I know Ms. Ashby is on here somewhere. So let's market and make sure that our community knows about the opportunities in front of our kids. So moving on to BS, and again, I want to remind the board, if we are going really in depth and asking a lot of questions, then we are going to be here for a long time. So if we can keep it at the higher level, so we can make this decision. And if you have concerns about some things, you certainly can make your concerns be heard. Otherwise, we are going to be here for a longer time. BS06 was replace the custodial equipment. It was about $500,000. It was floor buffers that were going to be purchased, and there was some safety concerns associated with it, that the current equipment caused carbon monoxide poisoning to one of our staff members. So any questions about this topic from the board members? Terry Seaman is out here if he wants to, if you have any questions.
He's supposed to be shoveling snow right now. That's not really him.
Okay. So seeing no questions, are we ready to give a thumbs up on this? Okay. So moving on to BS10, which is renovate the auditorium at Dorothy High School, which was $250,000. Again, it's an enrollment opportunity. And I know that outside benefactor anonymously donated about $100,000 roughly. I think that was the amount of money that was donated. And Dorothy has got brand new seating out there in the auditorium. So this would kind of match the brand new seating that they have with a brand new stage, so our students can safely perform. Some of that stage is warped out there. That's my understanding. Questions or topic on BS10, Director Nelson.
Just a quick comment that I love that we are now putting our own money into bringing auditorium up to date. Kind of going back to the comment that Director Bankus made. Oh, can you guys not hear me?
Yeah, can you
just lean in?
I can't hear you.
Okay. I love that we're putting our own money into the auditorium, that we're saying to that private donor, thank you for what you've done, and we see the value in it, and we want to do the same. And kind of going back to Director Bankus's point of things are more maybe appreciated when you have to put your own skin in the game. So I think this is a good just nod to the individual that made the donation. And definitely we want to let them know that, hey, we're going to do even more. So make sure it gets back to that person that we're going to even do more to the auditorium. I was in there. Okay, good. And I was in there recently, and it looks great. The seating and everything looks great.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the benefactor to circle back and thank him for his generosity. BS10, renovating the auditorium at Dorothy High School. Do we have a thumbs up on that one? Okay, so moving on to BS26, which is purchase 8 activity school buses. This is the biggest item request, about $920,000. I do have some questions on it, but I do see some hands already up. I'll go to Director Loma first.
When you say activity buses, is that distinguishing the size of the bus or just a bus used simply for activities?
A non-CDL driver bus that would belong at the school's discretion to support mostly club activities and small excursions that don't require a CDL requirement. We've
That-
canceled many of educational opportunities this year due to the bus driver shortage. This is a smart use of one-time dollars that will pay long-term payback. It is not meant to not suggest that we want to continue to reward and recruit bus drivers. We have a plan in pay for compensation packages to ensure that we can keep a solid bus driver corps. Terry, anything to add to that?
No, sir, you summed it up well.
Okay, first of all, you gotta stop reading my mind, because you answered everything. I had a question, exactly, we don't need another big bus riding around half empty. All right, thank you.
Director Jurgensen.
With the shortage in bus drivers, and some other alternative solutions we've been using right now, on a given day or maybe over the past school year, how many of our big yellow buses do we have that have not seen action?
I do not have that answer. We run about 61 buses on the road every day. Our
Okay.
current fleet, we've got just over 100 buses.
Okay.
So when we have not, and this has been intentional, we have not gotten rid of any of our excess buses over the last 2 years because of supply chain issues. We've been using them as part storage.
Okay, cannibalizing our own fleet where we need to.
Yes.
Okay. My only reason I ask is, being that it's the largest ticket item on there, I love the idea of having them and getting them for the intended purpose of field trips and club activities and getting sports teams where they need to go. Maybe could we add something in here where we're gonna, find a couple buses to sell to offset the cost of this by, I don't know how much buses are sold for, but just being fiscally wise of saying, hey, we sell a few buses and we can offset half the cost of this line item. I don't know how much buses go for, but if we've got over 100 and yes, I understand parts piece and keep some for that. Are there ones that are running where we can maybe offset some of this cost? Even though we have the one-time money, I understand that.
There is a very limited market for used buses. A 15-year-old to 20-year-old bus, the most we've been able to get when we've sold them is $5,000 to maybe $7,000 or $8,000. So there's really not much of a market for them. Most of the market is they're sold and converted to recreational vehicles.
At that point, it's probably better to donate them and take the the deduction.
There's certainly an opportunity for us to explore offsets, but because of the long lead time, remember, these are items that we pulled forward. We're running somewhere between 12 and 18 months on lead time of new vehicles. And so the idea here was to move this forward to allocate the non-recurring funds to make the purchase such that even as we struggle through a portfolio and diversified solution for transportation for next academic year, it would position us better for the out years without having to tie it to if this happens, then this could happen. It would very complicate this opportunity to tie it to the sale of X number of yellow buses. Although I do understand the concern and agree, Director Jurgensen, that we don't want to be running around with 40% excess fleet for what the demand is.
Thank you.
So a couple of questions from my side, and I see a couple of other board directors have their hands up. What's the lead time when we order these buses, Mr. Steeman?
I just told you.
You did? I didn't hear you.
Go ahead, Terry.
12 to 18 months.
12 to, so even if we order this, it's not going to be ready for this upcoming academic year. You're talking about 24, 25 that these activity buses would be ready.
That is likely for the majority of them, although there is always the opportunity that there is a bus or two out there on the market. And 2 weeks ago, when we put together this request, we actually found two that were in the Midwest for about $125,000 each.
Okay. And the capacity of these buses is roughly between 14 to 17 students. Is that what that is?
No, sir. It's 14 passengers and a driver.
Oh, 14
The
passengers.
CDL requirement is for more than 15 people in a vehicle.
Okay. So if a second grade class has to go on a field trip, you may have to use multiple activity buses to transport them.
That would be correct.
Okay. Director Nelson.
I have reservations on this one. I love that we're trying to problem solve, but I just don't see how this is going to work when it only seats 14 students. I'm just thinking my daughter's third grade class, there's 60 kids in third grade. So I just don't know that it's going to meet the need that we need it to.
Let me help explain the need and how we came up with the number. We thought 2 per high school, 1 per middle school, and then 1 per regional superintendent to disperse if a elementary school needed it. So an example would be last week we recognized, or next week we're recognizing FBLA regional award winners who are now going to states and beyond out of Doherty High School. That day before, we did not have a transportation solution for the FBLA team to be able to go just to the other side of Colorado Springs to compete, because we didn't have a yellow bus, because all our yellow bus drivers are managing the large part of our infrastructure and the larger field trip requests. And so then, because we realized that we had activity buses, we were able to circle it back to Doherty High School, who does have 1 or 2. I'm not sure how many. Terry might know they have 2. That then they were able to find both the staff member that supports FBLA and another staff member to be able to drive the students to that event. So we put the primer in here for the number of 8. We do need to do the research to understand who has exactly how many, but the structure was 2 per high school, not to meet third grade field trips to Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, but to meet the robotics team needs to go across town. And I have to continually say no because I don't have the buses to support it. Most of these club activities happen at a very inconvenient time for yellow buses to support. Anything that happens in and around after school is just a non-starter. Most of our bus drivers are driving between 2 and 3 routes in support of just the kids that we transport to and from school every day. So we might have used some of the wrong language. An activity bus is mostly for an activity, not for a field trip. A field trip, we would love to be able to support as we stabilize our bus driver fleet and our transportation department to be able to meet those needs. But the bottom end of that pool right now has been those with the smallest need, which are these activities and ways for clubs to be able to utilize the opportunity. And I can immediately think of some of the opportunities at Wasson for some of our high school students as they try and get access to some of our higher quality CTE programs. If we had 14 kids, we could find a way to transport them in an activity vehicle as compared to having to allocate a bus every day, whether or not the kid was going to use it or not.
So there was a request in the original packet for converting a sped bus. And that request, I think it was 2 sped buses, and the total was $20,000. Do you need a CDL license to drive the sped bus?
Barry, if you can talk about the CDE requirement for CDL conversion.
Yeah, after we put in that request, we had some discussions with CDE, and their position is that we cannot change the manufacturer's seated rating on the bus. So our original plan is we have some smaller buses that seat approximately 24 passengers, and our thought was we could convert those by permanently reconfiguring them to 14 passenger vehicles and allow a non-CDL driver to operate them. New information that's come back to us is that CDE will not allow that conversion.
And if we couldn't have, so as it stands, because I actually would say, let's not convert it. Let's just use the bus as it is. But you're saying the bus as it is does require that CDL license?
Yes, ma'am. It has
Okay.
more than 14 passengers and a driver
Okay, I see.
capacity.
Okay. That's all my questions. I still have reservations knowing that we have so many buses sitting in our lot not being used. But that's all my questions.
Director Bankus.
I just have a question of clarification. In the description, it said the per mile cost is similar, but will not include an hourly driver charge. Can you explain to me how that charge comes back to the school?
Yeah, right now, our bus drivers for the most part are on 6-hour contracts for 173-hour days. So anytime that they operate a bus outside of those hours, we either have to pay them added or overtime salaries, depending on how many hours they've driven. Those salaries are not budgeted. We only budget for their base 6 hours per day.
And so the school, and then the school would pay for their work hours, driving the activity bus?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So the school would reimburse us for labor hours as well as the fuel.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Nelson, do you still have a follow-up question? Okay, so what I'm hearing from the concern, some of the concerns I do have with this, that it's a long lead time, about 12 to 14 months. So these buses may not even be available for this upcoming academic year. And one of the things that this does not address is field trips. From my side, the feedback that I get from most of the schools, parents, and staff out there is that they want to take a 4th grade class to the state capital for a field trip. And right now, we don't have the opportunity to provide those kind of field trips, whether it is for a bigger group of students that's going on a field trip, or for an athletic event, or for a band concert. This may help with club activities, but it doesn't still solve the bigger transportation issues that we have. And
Right.
that can be addressed through hiring more, recruiting more bus drivers itself, so we can provide these opportunities for our students, the field trips and the athletic activities. Hopefully that is part of the budget conversation for next upcoming year. Superintendent.
We're planning a diversified portfolio for transportation to accommodate the lack of bus drivers, not just in District 11, but regionally. We seek to be more competitive in that market space, but we have to accept the fact that the days of 100+ bus drivers seem to be in the rearview mirror. We believe that we are able to provide a budget this year for transportation that will actually be an overall savings while increasing salaries from what we had budgeted in the previous years. So we'll bring that to a work session if you'd like to be able to discuss. What I would ask is perhaps if you all would give a thumbs up if we find, we'll just say, 2 to 3 vehicles that are available on the open market that we can go ahead and try to get into contract negotiations with them and bring them to the board for maybe an individual vote at that time. The long lead of a new vehicle definitely doesn't hurt us to wait a couple of weeks, but I would hate for a couple of activity buses to pop up. It is part of our diversified portfolio solution is to have activity buses. So while I do agree that this doesn't solve the field trip problem, it's not designed to solve the field trip problem. This is a way for us to use non-recurring dollars to take some fallout money and purchase activity vehicles to put us in a better position overall for transportation.
Right.
Okay. So are you talking about used buses that that you're looking at in the next 2 or 3 weeks?
Used activity vehicles.
Used activity, okay, vehicles. Great.
The last thing we need are extra yellow buses.
Okay, Director Art.
Thank you. To the superintendent's comment, it seems to me like with the lead time, this could be a yes and solution. We set aside the funding. It's a yes and solution. We can say yes to the funding, they continue to look. If they don't find it, they're not going to get it. But it might not solve all of our problems, but it's going to alleviate some of them. And if that, you look to the second and third order effects, as Jim Mason used to say, if it allows us to get our kids around, whether it's the occasional field trip because it's just a one class field trip with 2 buses, or if it's a club, that's something worth investing in. So I would prefer we say we do a thumbs up on this and see at least if we can move it forward.
Okay, so thank you. With that, the one addition that I may have is several items were pulled from the big list that was initially presented to the DAC budget subcommittee. And some of those may have an immediate impact on student enrollment. One of the couple of things that I'm talking about is exterior painting of schools or landscaping around every single school. So all those things may have an immediate impact on some of our schools as far as enrollment goes for this August of 2023. So if this is a conversation that can wait 2 or 3 weeks until you bring up the transportation portfolio conversation at a work session, I don't know when we are going to schedule that, but I can certainly ask the board for a thumbs up on this total package as it is presented. And if we get a thumbs up, so be it, we can move it on. If not, then the second consideration would be that at least approve what Director Gall, Superintendent Gall was asking about 3 buses, maybe 3 or 4 buses as an interim solution, 3 or 4 activity vehicles as an interim solution. So as it is presented, 8 activity buses, $920,000. That is the request. Thumbs up on this one. Okay, I see 4, 5 thumbs up. So which moves on with this. So we don't need to have
we'll bring a transportation plan for the budget next year to the March 15th work session, if we can schedule that before spring break.
Okay, I still, my concern there, Superintendent Gall, is that we need to be actively having field trips in our schools and supporting our students and staff through those field trips. It seems like it's not happening this year because of bus driver shortage. We need to bring that program back. Hopefully,
we all agree. We have the same vision. We'll be excited to present the plan to you on March 15th.
Okay, so Director Nelson, you had a thought, comment?
Yes, just that if that plan, that transportation plan includes compensation and raising compensation for our bus drivers, then that should be happening in an executive session and not a work session. So I don't know how we balance.
That's a good idea. So let's please do that. Thank you for the protocol correction.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to IT 5 and 6, I will ask for both of these together. This is going to be PeopleSoft training and review and evaluation of the PeopleSoft software that is there. Are there any questions on this, or can this be a thumbs up? Okay, moving on. You can go back.
Keep going. You don't have to
Turning off your screen, Mr. McCarron. We don't have any questions. I think this is a value add. We need our staff to be adequately trained and an evaluation that takes place of that PeopleSoft so we can use it more efficiently. Moving on to Superintendent 1, which is listening circles, which was about 13,500.
Yeah, we just don't have the budget to expand our opportunities to engage with our community. Deborah, do you want to field any questions here?
I don't see any questions at this point in time. I think this was a request that came from Ms. Luann DeClava, and she had talked to the board about that family initiative collaboration with this, and this is going to help with that. So hopefully we will use some or all of this funding the rest of this academic year, if not roll it over to next year. Okay, I think I have a thumbs up on this. I already asked for that. Superintendent 2 is the training for our teachers for AP and IB training for all our schools. Any questions on this one? Or are we moving for thumbs up on that one? Oh,
I think Julie has a question.
Yes,
Director.
just a small question. Is it, do people have to travel for this, or is this something where we can bring in a trainer and have someone train it here? It seems to me it would save on a lot of travel money. I don't know if they do that though.
Tamara, do you have any experience with the actual training to comment? Or Carol, any of the other academics on the line?
I do.
And go ahead, Darren.
Yeah, Julie, the director op, they don't typically work that way. I will share with you that the training that we're looking at, most of it's in Denver. So it's, I mean, there's, Cherry Creek. So I think a majority of it will happen fairly local. Some of it will have to go elsewhere.
That's encouraging. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a thumbs up on this one, AP IB training? Okay, so moving on, the last three items that are there, I'm going to combine that together. It all looks like it's some type of marketing for our schools. One is supplemental marketing needs for 150,000. And then Superintendent 13 is Mylar and Wayfinder signs for 100,000, and then electronic marquee signs for 200,000. So it all falls under marketing and Ms. Ashby and Superintendent Gall. So.
Yeah, I'll just very briefly, I have been spending a lot of time with Deborah and her team, and they just don't have the capacity in staffing to meet the high marketing demands that we have. We continue to be outmarketed by our neighboring districts by reputation only. We've done a good job this year in reestablishing D11 as a brand and establishing ourselves as an excellence of 150 years in our sesquicentennial. But we want to do very specific marketing in targeted schools that are all boundary itemed or boundary neighborhood to be sure that we're getting the unique nature of each school advertised in the region of which it serves. I always use the Rampart versus Doherty example. It's just what side of Rangewood you're on. They're basically the same neighborhoods. They're the same schools, but we lose families to Rampart High School all the time, and for no good reason. The board has just approved a renovation of its auditorium. We have new seating in place. We have a new turf field. We have a new track. We have lots of good things happening at Doherty. We had an award-winning marching band. We had students recognized for their jazz performances last weekend. What we want to do is we want to get professional grade marketing around that such that we can put, and I'm just using Doherty as an example, Doherty on the map in that boundary conversation where now families will start to say, well, maybe we should go to Doherty. That's a hell of a commercial. We are proud of our schools. And I do believe in the fundamental belief statement that people will choose quality, but taking the time for word of mouth to get there is just too long. And so I appreciate Deborah being open to how do we expand her team in a temporary way through some subcontracted marketing agencies to help us with some of these higher lifts that are just going to take us too long to get there. That's the marketing piece.
Yep.
Ms. Ash,
Go ahead.
do you have anything to add on to that, or can we open it up for comments or questions from the board?
The only thing that I'll add is that we end our choice window today. However, we know with declining enrollment that we're always enrolling. And we also have kindergarten roundup coming up for all of our kindergarten elementary schools. And we've got some summer programs that are coming up as well that we'd really love for more people to be aware of and to get the word out beyond our folks who are in D11 already. And for us to be able to do that, it does have a cost.
Director Bankus.
My only concern is on the last one, the new electronic signage. So I go past Doherty High School all the time whenever I leave the house, and I have to say the size of that electronic sign is such that I cannot read it when I'm driving by. And so when I went by today, it was beautiful. It was orange and red and orange and red and yellow. And I'm sure it said something wonderful on there. But in the past, I've been able to see musical, May 12th and 13th, and they would tell you the name of the play. So if we're going to do electronic signage, what is our criteria for that? How, now for the kids standing there or parents parked in their cars, they can read the signage. But when you're driving by, it's very difficult. And so who is our audience? Is it the people who already attend the schools and the parents that go there who already get the newsletters, or are we trying to reach a broader audience?
Go ahead, Deborah.
Director Bankes, thank you for that question. I believe that the answer is yes, and because the idea with the marquee signs would be to ensure that they are a good tool for follow-up to the newsletters, to the D11 loop messages, to the hard copies of flyers that go out in the students' backpacks or through the electronic social media formats that they use. And then I think the other piece to that is for the community. Yeah, we have a lot of people that walk in Colorado Springs, that ride bikes, that are out, moving around. And so, yeah, word of mouth can start through what's on those marquee signs. And they do provide a more visually appealing product to communicate what's going on. They can be updated a little bit quicker. And then they have that access for a broader audience.
Well, I will vote for this, but I have to tell you, I think we're shorting out another part of our community. If you can't read the sign, and I know other folks who go to the plays. I know other folks look at those signs to see when finals week is coming so that we can time our traffic using the streets in front. I know that the signs going up saying parent conferences are coming up. All those kinds of notices that go out are shared by more than just the kids in school and the parents. I would like to just make that comment that I think it needs to be more easily read if you're doing even 20 miles an hour on that road. I agree, they're visually attractive, they're up to date, they're beautiful. I just don't think they accomplish the goal. Thank you.
Director Loma.
In my understanding, when you say electronic signage, are you looking at LCD screens, or what are you looking at when you say? Because that's a broad statement. Electronic, everything's electronic. Because I know if you get an LCD screen, you can change that with the flick of a button in seconds. So I'm not sure what you're looking at.
I think Director Bankes' reference to the Doherty marquee is a great example of something that is either outside of the school, hanging on the school, or towards the end of the property line that you alluded to with electricity can visually be updated as soon as possible. So those types of marquees are what the goal would be for every school, sir.
So LCD.
Yes, updated, modern electronic. We can rotate several messages through the course of the day. We're just trying to present it's really a curb appeal option and combined with messaging. When you look at other school systems, or at least newer schools, they will have standardized electronic marquees, which give them an opportunity to not rely upon just email messaging for people to understand what the next event is at the school. And we would target these in those areas that we feel that we are losing market to neighboring districts. That would be our priority.
Okay. So this is not going to cover all schools, but targeted schools.
Again,
Okay.
this is part of losing less kids every year. We've all seen the report of 10% of our potential population selects District 20 schools. So they literally drive out of their way to leave our school system. How can we continue to combine both the academic experience, the social emotional, the extracurricular, all the things that we do well? How can we help tell and sell that story in a way that might resonate with a family to no longer drive cross boundary for an education?
Director Nelson.
I am struggling with this one. Looking at the other requests that are.
I can't hear you.
I'm struggling with this one, looking at the other requests that are in the original packet. that are comparable in cost, being able to paint 16 buildings on the outside or redo some of the landscaping, xeriscaping, I think that's going to give us more bang for the buck versus a flashy sign. I drive by 3 different signs on my way to taking kids to and from school, and I can read them. They're functional, and I just don't think a lit up sign is what's really going to bring families back to D11. I would rather we put this 200,000 towards the paint idea, or like I said, the landscaping. So that's where I stand on this. I think we could do more with the money in a different way.
Yeah, and so just to comment from a protocol perspective, we are not suggesting that this is more important than painting. This is just an item that if we were going to do it and want to have an impact for next academic year, we would want to program the dollars now. The other items in that list, as you can see, there's a priority ranking on there. We also prioritized the painting exterior and interior of schools is very high. It's just not a long lead item for us.
Okay, so what is coming in front of the board is items that are urgent lead items right now that they need a feedback on, and that painting could potentially be taken care of maybe a couple of months down the road with other requests that may come in front of the board. Director Nelson, are you done? You have other questions too?
Just a follow up, where is the prioritization? I don't see that. You mentioned that you had it listed by priority somewhere.
Well, I think
it was listed that way for executive cabinet. It might not be listed that way because this is the feedback from the DAC piece. But the executive cabinet had prioritized them.
The list that I can answer that question, the list that went in front of the DAC budget subcommittee had all these items listed as priority 1, 2, or 3. I think that could be what Superintendent Gall is talking about.
But it's not on board docs anywhere like that.
I didn't see that. Maybe it's not on docs. It was the one that you may have a copy of it.
I probably have it in an email.
Yeah, you have it in an email for the budget subcommittee. It went to budget subcommittee. Director Jurgensen first, and I'll come to you, Director Loma.
I mean, I understand framing the conversation in, urgent things and things that need a lot of lead time. I wouldn't mind revisiting like the DAC budget committee's memos, just in trying to pay for the, beautification and grounds improvement. I wouldn't mind approving that now if it'd be the will of the board to say, hey, Sachs, you can start talking about, some xeriscaping or some perennials or, I don't know, whatever you want to do to beautify your school, knowing that we have this money for you, as well as, a couple other things that enhance the curb appeal of our schools, because I think that could be something that we approve now in funding. That's not going to be adding too much more to this, 2.8 million. It might get to 3.3, let's say, but in the grand scheme of things, as Director Nelson pointed out, we're adding a bunch of value add to the physical appearance of our schools as people drive by and walk by. So I'd be up in adding those to this list if that's a possibility.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, not take anything away that's on the list right now, but add on to it. Okay, correct. I heard from Director Jurgensen. Director Loma.
Well, I agree with what Jason said, the Director Jurgensen. But my understanding of marketing and to Director Nelson's comment, it's not that this in itself will increase enrollment, but it's a value add to the other item, the marketing tools. Everything in marketing has to scaffold on top of each other. The email, the social media, the flyer, and then the marquee, they all value add, and you really improve your odds of your email and your social media working with marquees. So I understand the logic, marketing. In my line of business, we call it evangelism, but it's still the same thing. And so I would beg to differ with Director Nelson's position. I think this is a good thing.
Okay, seeing that it's 11, 13, and 14 together, if you want to go step by step, I can. One question I had for you, Chief Chief Ashby, there was one request that was removed and it didn't come in front of the board, which was a $20,000 request for that Big Kids book club. Is it possible that if the board approves 11, 13, and 14, that Big Kids book club is the 20,000 you requested for it can fit in one of these three categories, and you still are able to provide that, mail those books to those students?
I think we just,
Before Deborah comments, again, we didn't pull off the Big Kids Book Club request. So if we need to pause this whole conversation to go through every line that we put forward, we didn't do that because the board asked us to not put things that might have compensation level issues in there to avoid or get in front of IBB and meet and confer. So we pulled forward the items that we thought required immediacy in action. We will reprogram $20,000 for Big Kids Book Club with or without this conversation in the time that Deborah needs that to happen. So
Okay.
I would really like us to stay on focus for the items. These are the recommendations from the school district's team that says these are the things that we need immediacy for to be sure that we can act on them. The other items that are on that list were what were initially presented to the DAC budget subcommittee, but sub conversations with the board asked us to piece this out in ways that we weren't putting too much on the table up front. So I don't want to go into what's not on the list. I want to exhaust this list and hope for us to get to the other body of work that's on the work session this evening.
Thank you for the clarity. So with that, Superintendent Levin, which is the marketing needs, show a thumbs on that one. Superintendent 13, which is the Mylar and Wayfinder signs, $100,000. Okay, one. Okay, I do see that. Okay, and then the electronic marquee signs, which is 200,000. Okay, and then
That's it.
Dr. Nelson, you had a comment?
Yeah, sorry, I just missed it. I did want to give a thumbs up on that 11. And I don't think
Okay.
that I caught it.
Okay, great. That's fine. So after all that conversation, it looks like the board is supportive. The will of the board is supportive of all the items that were brought forth in front of the board at this time. We understand the urgency that some of these have a lead time associated with it. And so hopefully you've got the direction from the board as far as to dispense this dollars in a timely manner to get the supports that our schools and students need. And then the rest of the items that were removed, at least it's not coming in front of the board. For clarity's sake, to the community and to the board too, these are items that may circle back and come at a later point in time in front of the board. Okay, so Director Art, I see your hand up.
Yes, there was one that concerned me that it was not addressed, and so I'm going to bring that up. And maybe Superintendent Gall can say if it will go in for certain to the next year's budget. And that's the business services item 15. It was $50,000 for replacing recalled fire suppression sprinkler heads, and it's a safety issue, in my opinion. So perhaps Terry Seaman would like to address it, or the superintendent. As far
I'll
as
let Terry
having-
address it. Terry
Okay.
can address it. We talked about this at length. Thank you for seeing that one on there.
So, Director Ott, we had one school that a fire inspector went through and identified that the heads were had been
Gary, can
recalled
you
by the
speak
manufacturer.
louder, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
It's better.
Okay. Recent fire inspection, the fire inspector noted that the heads had been recalled by the manufacturer. And we know that that is not the only school that we have those heads at. So we will figure out how to get funding for it. It's just, it's not one that's necessarily time sensitive, that if we don't do it in the next couple of weeks, it can't happen. So that's why it wasn't moved forward on this list. The fire suppression system will work as it's designed. It's just good business practice not to leave recalled items in service.
To add on to it, we also believe there's a insurance conversation with the manufacturer because it's a recall of the manufacturer. So there should be some restitution conversation that happens in the replacement instead of it just being the burden of the district to fund. But we all agree that the safety of our schools is primary and paramount and are prepared to make a contingency fund transfer to handle that if needed.
All right. I just hope that it would be addressed, you know, if we don't have it addressed this school year, then I'd love to see it in the budget for the next one because yes, safety issue here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. And so a couple of things that, first of all, wrapping up this conversation, everything that was presented to the board has given a thumbs up on, so it can circle back at as quickly as possible if it is going to be the next board meeting for a formal board vote and approval. And then the other takeaway was that we do need to address some of the curb appeal items that will attract students and families to our school, whether that's going to be painting of our schools, exterior landscaping, and then the last thing that Director Art addressed, the safety of the sprinkler heads. So maybe those are priority items that the district can prioritize and bring it back to the board at an appropriate period of time. Do you need to wrap up this conversation, Superintendent Gall, or are we good to
No,
move?
I think we should just talk offline on when the board is ready to entertain the rest of those requests. We just want to make sure that we're building a sustainable, balanced budget at the same time and handling negotiation requirements for meet and confer and IBB. So having noted the three things that you highlighted, we're prepared to even bring them forward for this type of a short discussion next week as Laura brings them to action. If you want to talk offline and tell me that there's 4 more things you want to pull forward, and then we can be on pause until we get to the end of the year, we're prepared for that.
Okay, so is the board comfortable moving on if the items that were talked about, one being the sprinkler head being added to this request? Let me see which, that alone, the sprinkler heads, is there a thumbs up on adding that to this request up there? Okay, so there is, let's have the sprinkler heads. And then the 2 other items that were brought about was one, the exterior painting of the schools. Is there a thumbs up to add that item, exterior painting of elementary schools? And I see a thumbs up on that. And then there was one about the landscaping. I think $5,000 was going to be allocated to every single school to figure out the landscaping and the outside whatever they need to address on the outside. Is there a thumbs up on that one? Okay, Tricia Nelson, quickly.
Some of the schools recently did have landscaping, so just maybe the wording there needs clarified that it states all schools will receive this funding, but I'm not sure all schools need it. I know Martinez just had a bunch of landscaping done, and maybe they still need another $5,000, but just that we take a look at the schools that are in the higher need and then allocating that way.
We'll take a look at the recent spend and create a tiering if we need to, or just an exclusionary list if some folks have been allocated decent amount of dollars recently for that regard.
Okay, is there a thumbs up on that one? So those 3 items are the ones that we are bringing back to your, hopefully somebody is capturing that, the exterior painting of the 16 elementary schools, the landscaping at about $5,000, you are going to take a look at that, and then the sprinkler heads. Okay, so Director Nelson, quickly. We still have another topic to cover. Oh, are you done? Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda is the AMP update.
If I could get Tamara to bring up, or I guess Melissa to bring up the slides, or if Tamara's bringing them up, I think you guys pre-negotiated that. Just as folks understand, literally every work session or board meeting, we're giving some level of update on what we're doing on our academic master plan. It is the body of the work for us as a school district. If I think from a large strategic lens, the first semester was really a lot of focus on how we do the work at pre-K. And now that we've opened up 4+ pre-K classrooms and continue to add to our enrollment, a lot of the work on the best first instruction. And now what you'll see here on the back half of this, as we come into the second part of the year, is some intentional work and redesign in some of our high school initiatives. Many school districts, when they think about turnaround, will start in early ed and then just cross their fingers and hope that those kids stay smart and progress their way through the system in 9, 10, and 11 years. We're taking a multi-pronged approach where now that we have that early ed piece moving and we feel certainly strong on what we saw on our math scores for elementary schools, but we're seeing that we are still waning on performance and growth and certainly on loss of student interest in high school. We thought it would be interesting to bring to you some high school initiatives and to bring into that conversation also that Darren Smith has been working in an executive fashion as both the principal of Coronado and helping lean in as a subject matter expert to our central office team. Tamara, over to you.
Okay, great. If we could move into the next slide. And I think this just gives you an idea for what we wanted to talk about. So we want to get into the last time we were together, we talked through quality neighborhood schools, our definition, some of the attributes, and then the ongoing work of how to endorse schools under that criteria. And this time we wanted to go deeper into how are we defining and looking at the work for quality neighborhood schools, specifically for high school. With that, we'll focus on Goal 4 and Goal 2 of the Academic Master Plan and our current work of how we're re-envisioning graduation requirements and infrastructure, specifically the work that Darren in his role, like Superintendent Gall explained, has been doing. And if you move to the next slide, I don't know, Superintendent Gall, if you want to talk a little bit more about the future of D11 or come back again at the end.
I think it looks like Superintendent Gall.
No, I'm sorry. I went and got a glass of water and I didn't want everybody to see me perusing my kitchen.
Yeah.
I think I covered it on the front end there. If you just go to the next slide, which is we talk a lot about preschool and early ed and what's happening in elementary school. Go to the next slide. And now as we move into this high school conversation, this is a slide that we use to talk about CTE. We pulled the CTE piece out of this update because it will require so much time that we didn't want to overwhelm the board. But we are really making an intentional focus of rethinking what is a secondary experience and how do we get to a true demonstration of knowledge instead of just what it is that CMAS or at high school, what SAT says we are or aren't achieving. We have so many of our young students who are looking for opportunities in our local community. What CTE can do for us is, I think, revolutionary, and moving CTE up early into the conversation and as part of our grad requirements will really become central to one of the differentiators of District 11 compared to our neighbors. Go ahead, next slide. And there we have it. Now you're back over to your goals 2 and 4.
All right. So, again, we're going deeper tonight on goals 2 and 4 of AMP, specifically from the lens of high school. The next slide. And with that, that's just a reminder, our vision, a portfolio of schools where every school is a quality neighborhood school with certain criteria, where we have pathways and programming to ignite students' interests so that we can reach our mission in D11. Moving to the next slide. And then there's our visual, again, building on that foundation, going all the way up to our graduate profile. Next slide. And then again here, just focusing in on access to specialized programming tonight, our courses, our requirements, personal financial literacy and world language, and the way we're thinking about adjusting the requirements so that every D11 student is able to obtain the attributes of that D11 graduate profile in service of preparing our students to profoundly impact the world. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed principal of Coronado High School and executive secondary principal, again, who's been leading out this work, and he'll take us through much of the rest of the presentation and the work that's currently been happening. And then we'll move it over to our executive director of student success, who is going to go through how we're putting pieces in place to track where students are and to help them on this journey of reaching the graduate profile attributes. So again, turning it over to Darren, very much appreciate his leadership, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm excited to share this information. These topics and concepts are things that I and others in the district have been thinking about for several years. It's progressive thinking. We believe that this type of thinking leads to better skills and opportunities for our students. And go to the next slide there, please. Just a reminder, the District 11 graduation requirements, there are 3 parts to earning a diploma, and we're going to focus our attention on ICAP. That's that first part, and then of course the next part there is the credits. And the demonstration of knowledge is not anything we're looking at changing or doing anything different. But if you look here at the bottom of this slide, you can see that there are 8 boxes in ICAP, and I point that out because we are recommending a 9th box that would live in ICAP, and it has to do with personal finance. Moving on to the next slide. Just again, a reminder of what we're talking about. We're talking about 46 credits. I'm focusing my attention here on the left, the left page of this 2-page document. 8 credits in English. I think we've all seen this. I'll just go down fairly quickly, but you've got. I want to focus on this 11 elective credits. I think that's going to be a key component at the end here. And really the vision around the credits is how do we provide more opportunities for our students to take things that interest them? How can we expand the number of electives? Just a reminder, moving on to the next slide. Neighborhood schools really we're looking at 4 components here. The 6 phases of learning is that first component, and in particular at the high school level, we've got to focus this semester on phase 6, which is the extension and application of learning. And then we move over to the right-hand side, their relevancy and opportunities. We have that's the next piece that we're looking at. There is something missing on the slide. Maybe there's an ad click potentially. No, let's go back. And we're looking at the next component. There's a less.
It's on the, Darren, it's on the board docs, the graduation rate / dropout rate. Is that what you're talking about? It's missing in this circle?
Well, there's this slide is a little, it's missing some pieces that I think help kind of explain, but I think I can fill you in a little bit here. Let me help you out here. Let me just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, on the right-hand side, it's instructional strategies, and we're talking about the 6 phases of learning. And then block scheduling is really that component on relevancy and opportunities. And then the less restrictive component there, you're seeing requirements allowing student choice. That's in reference to graduation requirements. And in the bottom left, internships, apprenticeship, and work-based learning is a focus on real-world experiences. So in review, we've got quality neighborhood schools, instructional strategies, that's 6 phases, block scheduling, that's the relevancy and opportunities that we're going to talk about. There's a component here in graduation requirements allowing a less restrictive requirement for students, which allows for student choice. And then the real world experience is that component on internships, apprenticeships, and work-based learning that we envision that our students will have access to. Moving on to the next slide, there are 3 focus areas for schools. The first one is for high schools. The first one's a block scheduling, and what we have here, we're thinking about is all D11 high schools on a unified schedule. And what we're talking about tonight, what we're proposing is a block schedule. The vision for that is the fall of 2023. So we would want to get that moving and get that in place this next school year. And what it does is it helps share resources, not only for students but also for staff. There's a deeper learning opportunity in a block schedule, and essentially more opportunities. And I'll talk more about this later. I'm gonna reference all these things a couple of times, but in a traditional schedule in District 11, what we've done in the past with 7 periods a day, that's 7 classes a day, that's 7 opportunities for a kid to earn credit. In a block schedule, that number jumps up to 8. And if you do the math on 8 credits a semester times 8 semesters in a high school career, you're talking about an opportunity to earn 64 credits, where in our previous model, you had an opportunity to earn 56 credits. If you look at the bottom of that, the left-hand side there, it says, it has a couple numbers in there, 46. That's what we require now. What we're going to talk about today is maybe we have an opportunity to push that graduation requirement up to maybe 49 or 50, which is what we're seeing in some of our surrounding districts. District 49 is at 40, and District 20 requires 50 credits, and those are 2 examples of schools that are using a block schedule, or districts that are using block schedule. The graduation requirements there in the middle, we're talking about that maybe implementing that in the fall of 2024 as we revisit what that looks like. And the concept there is better personalized learning through choice. There is a personal finance component to this proposed new graduation requirement. And then the last piece you can see there is a 2-year world language requirement that I think was mentioned at the beginning of this meeting. The final thing there, the third focus area for high schools is internships, apprenticeships, and work-based learning. And we have a goal to increase student participation at 5% annually until we can reach capacity on what we can and cannot do. Next slide. Just a reminder, what's our foundation? What are we striving for in District 11? It's skills based. The District 11 graduate profile skills and all the skills you can see listed here, is really the foundation of what we're talking about and why we're looking at a structure that would better support this type of learning. So practical learning. We think about more opportunities for projects in when we have the structure of a block. Next slide. Here's an example of a block schedule, what we're doing at Coronado. And you can see here, this is Monday only. And I think the key component for all of us to look at in this schedule is that first and second piece there, the professional learning community and the professional development piece. Those are the first 2 things that happen in the morning on a Monday. And if we could have that consistently in all of our high schools, we think about cross-district professional development, cross-district professional learning communities, in particular with CTE and performing arts, and just some of those disciplines that could use support elsewhere and can use those types of conversations and learning in other high schools. And then the rest of it is just a mock-up. I mean, this is what we do at Coronado. We have 30-minute periods on Monday, and we run through all eight of our classes. Mitchell has periods 1 through 4 one Monday. Then the following Monday they go 5 through 8, And I think those are two just simple ways to look at it. But please note there's all kinds of different ways, different opportunities, pretty exciting ways to use this Monday. But this is this is kind of the beginning of it. Next slide. And then Tuesday through Friday in all District 11 high schools, you're looking at a 110-minute period, and you'd run through 4 classes each day. Tuesdays and Thursdays would be periods 1 through 4, and then Wednesday and Fridays would be periods 5 through 8. And just to give you a glimpse of what it could look like, what it does look like in some of our schools in District 11 as it stands. Next slide. Why would we do this? I've alluded to this, but sharing resources, that includes sharing teachers, sharing programs. If we don't have a program at Coronado, it'd be a great opportunity for our students to access those programs elsewhere. And of course, we have some of that happening right now. It's happening around the district, but could we do more? Students. Again, students could access programs at different places, and again, that does happen. And then there's other things. There's other things that opportunities, other ways of thinking about this that aren't even on the table right now. But I think creatively there's some other things that we're not even thinking about. Again, it's about opportunities for our students to access better skills. Next slide. We have partnerships with Pikes Peak State College and CSU Pueblo. One I didn't put on here is Western Colorado University. Our block schedule does support that and does support the opportunities for kids to access programs that way. I have a couple pictures up here of internships, work-based learning experience, apprenticeships. Those are the kinds of things we would love for our students to access, have more opportunities to access, and a block schedule does support that. Chunks of time do support those opportunities better than a traditional 53-minute period or 50-minute period, however you want to think about that. Next slide. And maybe go back one more slide. And I'll just stop for a minute. There are 2 parts to this presentation. Maybe this would be a good time
for questions.
Field questions. So what do we have out there?
Yeah, and just as we get to some questions from the board directors, I want to be clear that when we pulled the high school principals together and we said, what can we do that makes the high school experience from a district's perspective and accessing all the things that we have to offer? How can we make that easier for the student? And there was no predetermination, because I know there'll be some questions on block scheduling. This came from the high school leaders themselves, who thought that this was the best solution to get this sharing of resources and ensuring that our students had equal and equitable access to the programs that we have to offer. And so I know there'll be a lot of questions about block scheduling, but I just want everyone who's here to understand that this was born from our school leaders presenting to myself and to Tamara that they thought this would be the right solution going forward for next year. And so we're ready for questions as you have them.
Okay, I see Director Jurgensen. Go ahead, Director Jurgensen.
Yeah, I really like this, what I'm seeing so far. The block schedule makes sense. The collaboration among high schools, tying into the career pathways. If Coronado's got something that a kid wants, but they like the academics at Palmer or Doherty or Mitchell, or they want to go do the aviation stuff at Mitchell, but their home school is Doherty, or whatever the case is, the fact that we can align schedules to meet the needs of our students in what you mentioned, phase 6 of getting them to extend and apply, maybe even knock out some certs and things like that along the way while they're still in high school. This is very exciting. It's awesome. So it sounds like, just to confirm, all of our principals are kind of on board with seeing a block schedule like this, so that we can have a little bit more collaboration for the sake of our students.
Yes, the principals are on board. That is true.
Okay. Well, they're the leaders in the building. So If we got some other people to bring on board, then we'll need to figure that out. But as long as we got the principals that are doing the work with their buildings on board, that's appreciative of me, or from me, I should say. Let's see. I think that was one of my main pieces there. I think that's it for now. It's exciting. The collaboration. The other thing you mentioned, Darren, then I'll be done, is the piece of having across campuses collaboration on data discussions or whatever it might be, where we could kind of unify PLC time or PD time to make that a little bit more efficient and viable for staff to actually talk to other 10th grade chemistry teachers who are able to actually share what's going good and where they can improve. I mean, that sounds like that could be a possibility here as well. So I really like that.
Okay. Director Art.
Thank you. I have several things, and I know Superintendent Gall, anticipated me. One of my, I can absolutely see where this would give us some excellent opportunities to integrate learning, and a student can, to Director Jorgensen's point, maybe I assume they could sit in on a class across town through virtual learning, perhaps. The one concern I would have would be where is a student in our district to go if they don't want block learning? Because it sounds like every school will do this. So that would be one question. And maybe to address this now or not, I did receive an email from a student who is not fond of your Monday setup and claims that many students don't like it. And I saw a student on Monday sort of randomly and asked her, and she said, oh no, it's just not, it doesn't work. Either there's too much to do in that slot of time or not enough to do. And so I appreciate that you've said Mondays could be addressed differently. I think they have to be. So those are just a couple of the forward things there. I've got a couple more.
Okay, do you want to address that, Darren, first?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of where would the student go, I think, well, they wouldn't have us place in District 11 if we're on a unified block. But the question that I ask is, the question I think about as you ask that is, if the block is done well and the training is right, it's a great opportunity for kids. And I think our kids and our staff are coming along. I mean, it does take time to get this dialed in, and in terms of professional development around a block, in terms of professional development around a Monday 30-minute session. I mean, these are things that we continue to improve and work on. And so, yeah, I guess I would just say, is it better learning? Is it better skill development? Do the kids walk away better prepared for the next level? And all the research I've seen, and even what we're experiencing at Coronado, I think it's leading to they're better off. And so, why is it they'd want a shorter period? Well, they want a shorter period because how are we using our block, and are we using it effectively, and are we developing that class that's just is student driven. And there are things kids don't think about, a lot of people don't think about in a traditional schedule that the block speaks to, and I've referenced this, but it's opportunities. And our kids get more opportunities to take classes that are more relevant to their specific learning, and in that short period, it's just not the same. So I think it's going to be, to answer, maybe this is the long answer. I think in time, and even the research will show this, after 3 years on a block, nobody wants to go back. They see the benefits, the kids, but it is, those first couple of years are a challenge. When I say nobody, that's a little extensive, but you gain more and more appreciation for what's happening in time. I don't know if that helps yet.
It does somewhat, and some of your comments relate to my additional questions. One was research. I know that that Coronado has really shown some progress this year. And I don't know if you would say it's related to the block schedule or not. Does research show that a block schedule in general is better than what we would consider the normal day right now?
In terms of skill-based learning, project-based learning, I mean, these are in terms of really digging deep into you know, concepts. Absolutely. In terms of student achievement on standardized tests, the research will show there's no difference. So there's no evidence to say one way works better than the other. They both, you know, I guess would have equal results that way. But when I think about what the universities are asking for, what you know, what careers, what the workforce is asking for, to me, it makes perfect sense.
I would just add to that, Principal Smith and Director Ott, there is considerable amount of research, especially where we're trying to head with competency attainment, where kids are truly competent in standards and in subject matter, that they have the time to develop that and go deep in it. And when you don't have that, you actually can't get to the level of depth that you need to. And it also helps with acceleration of learning. So for students that have not come in at the level, it's also a way to help support that learning even more, while also taking students that have come in and take them to the next level and go deeper with the content. So you need that amount of time and intensity with the subject matter to actually truly be able to meet core competency as we're looking at it right now and as defined by the state.
Thank you. That's encouraging. So speaking of time and competency, the amount of time, maybe it's because it's more efficient, but when we speak to there being 8 classes or 8 blocks or however, basically the possibility of getting 8 credits instead of the 7, it seems as though we would be spending less time unless we lengthen the school day. You would be spending less time in each subject matter, and you still have the same material to cover. So can you address that for me?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is, yeah, you do. It is a little bit less time, but you're able to go deeper. I mean, if you look at the structure of a block and the amount of time that you have to get deeper into content but also into the skills. I mean, Julie, you're speaking exactly to one of the first slides, and that is, are we a skills-based focus, or is it about content? And in terms of, you know, even standardized tests, in terms of deeper learning, yeah, you're gonna give up a little content, but you're gonna be able to go a little bit deeper. And in terms of retention, I think it's pretty clear that that deeper learning is going to lead to better retention and for our students on the things that we do cover. So, I mean, there's a trade-off there, but again, back to what is being asked of our kids as they leave. What is workforce? What is even colleges? I mean, what are they asking for? It's not necessarily content. They're asking for these kids to come with those graduate profile skills. So this is a structure and a model that gives our students better opportunities to access and become better at the skills.
All right, just one more question. And this one is about collaboration. We know that it felt like District 20 decided to do sort of a top-down, we're changing your schedule. And given the student interest that I'm seeing on Mondays, as you know, in reaction as part of that block schedule, and that staff will need staff buy-in, in theory, to me, it's about more than just the high school principals. How how might this impact families? And I feel like families haven't had a say, and that we might want to expand input from staff as well. So to Director Jorgensen's point about something else recently, we gotta sell this, or at least let folks know why it's a good idea, I think, rather than just saying, guess what, we just changed this on you without consulting, anyone but 4 people, maybe. That could be the take. So I'm curious if there's plans to share this with the community to a greater level and ask for input. We used to do the World Cafes and equivalent of town halls, if you will.
Well, yeah, there's absolutely this spring. I mean, there's opportunities for there's 2 schools in District 11, 2 high schools that need to do some of that work, and we're talking about Palmer and Doherty, but in terms of the other schools in District 11, that work's been done. I mean, we've done that. We have talked to our staff and Palmer and Doherty are having those conversations now. So I think that's part of the process. But yeah, it's going to take time. It's going to take a little bit of to your point, selling. And does everyone understand what the benefits, what the pros and cons of all of this is? And again, at the end of the day, I hope we all understand that yes, families, students, and staff need to weigh on this, but I'm gonna ask all of us to think about what is happening at the university, what is happening in industry, and that's really should be also a big part of why we do what we do. And so I think that's got to weigh in too. Hopefully that weighs in.
All right. I look forward to hearing about how that conversation proceeds at Doherty and Palmer, and that it is happening. Thank you.
I do want to chime in. Go ahead, Darren. Are you done?
Well, I don't know. You asked the question about the Mondays. I don't know if you needed more clarification on that.
Mostly just letting you know that there's great concern about how they're handled currently, and I'll be meeting with a student about that, and I will encourage him to chat with you and share concerns. But you might check in with your students as well.
Yeah, we do. We survey the kids, and I actually know the student you're talking about, and I've already. I mean, I can tell you what. Maybe not right now because it's going to take too much time. But there's really another piece to that. That this kid's doing research in an English class, and it's part of his. A great example of a kid doing a project, doing research in a block setting that's allowing him to really dig deep into something pretty special, and at least in his mind, and all of our minds really. But sorry, Michael, you were getting ready to say.
I was just going to comment on the Monday issue. You brought it up as well. I knew that you had a particular dialogue with the student in question that's been speaking with Director Ott on the concerns with Monday. We know holistically across our high schools that we are not taking full advantage of our advisory period as well. And so that's also a body of work that we seek to take on in preparation for next calendar year. There are several different ways to be able to address that, but we want to make sure that CCR is really about college and career readiness, and that it shouldn't be dead time just because you're done with your FAFSA. There's tons of ways for us to be exploring better ways of use for that, but we've gotten that feedback. I've gotten that feedback very specifically from the Student Advisory Council that meets in the boardroom once a month at central office. And so we're continuing to work on that as well.
Thank you.
If I could just jump in real quick, Director Ott, to your question about getting feedback.
Can't hear you, Scott.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Lean way in.
Lean.
So to your question about talking to.
Can't hear you, Scott.
Can you hear me now?
It's not mute, it's the volume. You just got to get really close to your speaker.
I get too close, you guys are going to get more than you need here. But so just what I will say is that to the question about buy-in from Doherty and Palmer, I have committed, along with Darren and the other area soups, to go talk to those faculties as often as they need, as many times as they want, to talk to them about some of their concerns and to address them as much as we can.
Okay, thank you. So I see Director Loma. Director Loma first.
Well, you addressed my first concern, the pushback that you'll get from staff, and you're addressing that, which is good. And then I'm pleased to hear Director Ott even mention parents, something to do with the parents' concerns, and that's almost right in line with one of, I believe, the Parents' Bill of Rights. They do have a right to want to know what's happening, and that's good. So I'm glad she has that opinion. But I think the overarching thing that leads to the need or leads to support what you're doing is we're failing now. We're not doing a good job now. So if we keep doing what we're doing, then we're kind of crazy. So I think that is the overarching issue. Something has to be done. So I applaud you guys getting together and say, let's do this. And let's do it, because like I said, right now it doesn't look too good. We look better than most places, but I was just reading in Baltimore, 23 schools do not have one student, not one, at grade level. And that's amazing. That's amazing to me. So we're not there, but we're not, we're not nothing to run around and shout about either. So I think you guys are making the yeoman's effort to improve what we have, and because we do have a lot of good, so we got to build on that. So I commend you on you guys brainstorming, coming together, and bringing a new ideal forward for our school district. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One, is our PLC enough? Second question would be, is it possible to have block schedule Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, perhaps a shorter day, in terms of just like giving the kids an opportunity to end the day a little earlier and moving into the weekend? Just a thought, not saying that's a really good answer or a good idea. The other question is, how are our special ed students doing with block? And I would say the final question is, in all of the scheduling, getting on the same page, will it be an opportunity for the students to really cross those borders to get to Odyssey for culinary if they're at Cornell? Ultimately, I would like to see this work where the students are engaging with multidisciplined curriculum from building to building, and they are able to do it as seamlessly as possible. Whatever program it could be music along with culinary, but they're at different high schools. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up special needs. In terms of a block, I mean, I think maybe there is a perception that it's just this one long session where you're just cramming information down kids' throats, but that's not what it is. It's an hour and 10 minutes that's broken up into 20-minute chunks, and there's transition times, and there's brain breaks, and there's in terms of professional development. Yes, this is a lift, but once teachers kind of get the idea of what it looks like and how to engage kids and when's the prime time for learning, and all that's factored into a lesson, it is, well, we believe it to be better. So special needs kids are having the same, I would say, the same experience as our other students as we evolve into getting better at our craft in this new model of teaching, at least in District 11. So I'm hoping that answers that question. we'll know more. How are they really doing? Yeah, we'll know more here as we get more information back from STAR testing and then PSAT, SAT. But as it stands, just what I'm seeing is they're having a pretty good experience overall. We have kids accessing Odyssey. I mean, we have a bus at Coronado that, and I believe at every high school. So it's already happening, but it's a challenge, I guess, I think there's room to grow there. I think it can be a challenge if we're not all on the same schedule, our classes don't align, if they don't line up at the right time. And so this is an example of how to better access all of our campus if we have a similar schedule with blocks of times for kids to transition to other places. So I see that just growing and getting better for all of our students as we all get closer to a unified schedule. And I can't remember what else you asked. Was there anything? What was the next piece?
Whether or not the PLC for an hour is enough.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to roll into 2 hours for that. Maybe it could be on a Friday and it's just a shorter day for the students. And I think the other question was the block schedule. Could it be just a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday?
Yeah.
And have that. And then there's one other question that dropped in while you were sharing. How many disciplines are in on the conversation? There are true principles are important, but there are so many other people at the table that could really bring in experience and ideas of how this could work. And I'm seeing that from all, whether it's the teachers unions, the parents, the students, everybody could have some say in how to get us to a place where it's running smoothly and they feel that the students are truly engaged and happy to have an opportunity to grow for some other areas. I'm just curious.
No, that's good. I think that's ongoing work. I mean, what you're talking about in terms of parents and students and everybody at the table, that's ongoing work. I guess what I'm hoping for is a launching point. Where can we launch and get rolling? And then how does this thing evolve? It will consistently evolve and get better in time, but can we all come to an agreement? This is our starting point, and then how do we work through all the different pieces moving forward? And that's years in the making. But in terms of why Monday is the Monday schedule, and then Tuesday through Friday is the way it looks right now. It really has to do with the calendar, the District 11 calendar. We went through the calendar. We looked at how our Mondays fall on holidays, and if we want to keep a consistent as possible schedule, week in and week out, we want to keep those Tuesdays through Friday consistent. And if you look at the master's calendar, that most of our holidays fall on Mondays. The 1 hour PD and PLC, I think, is I'm seeing it just about right. I really do see it just about right. I know there's some district, one thing that we have in the calendars, we do have district professional development days built in at the beginning of each semester, and I think there are a couple that are going to be factored in midway through the year in this newest proposed calendar. But it appears to be just about spot on from what I'm seeing at Coronado. A 1 hour a week for professional learning community, that's unheard of in most districts. 1 hour a week of professional development is pretty much unheard of in any other district. And so this is really progressive thinking from the get-go.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm wondering if I see Director Bankus, you have your
Yes.
hand raised, and I wonder if we could, in service of time in the rest of the presentation, if we might be able to move into it and then come back to your question first thing as we move into it, if you're okay with that. Okay, looks like you're okay. Great. We were having some problems earlier with the matching up of the presentation with what was posted. What was posted was correct. And so now we've made some adjustments in sharing and we've got the correct version up. So I'll turn it back over to Darren. Yeah.
Okay, part two. Moving on to the next slide. Graduation requirements. You know, there is a vision for a less restrictive graduation requirement for our high school kids. And so what you're looking at here is the courses that we offer, and then you have our current IKF R1, and then we have a proposed IKF R1, just the column next to that. So as it stands, I'm just going to read through the rows and just kind of talk you through each part here. In terms of English, nothing would change in our proposed version. Math, nothing would change. You still required 6 credits, still require our students to complete Algebra 1 and 2. That's first year algebra. Science has a little bit of a change. Science right now still requiring 6 credits for graduation, but we do require our students to take biology and physical science. And those are, that's 2 years of their science is prescribed form. Prescribed for our students. They have one choice to meet graduation requirements. In the proposed version, a student can take whatever science interests them. They can take ecology. You know, what is most relevant in our world right now? Is it in, maybe it's environmental science, but it just other options for our students. Social studies is a little bit different too. Again, the number of requirements stays the same, 6 credits, but one difference as you read across the row there, U.S. history becomes highly recommended as opposed to a requirement as it stands now. And then the one piece that doesn't change, that can't change because it is a state requirement, is civics or American government. That would still be a semester class that all of our students are required to take for this required to take per the state of Colorado. And just a fun fact, that is the only credit that is on the books at the state level for our students that they have to take per our CDE. Moving on to physical education, you can see we currently require 3 credits. The proposed version would drop that down to 2 credits. And then moving down to the last bucket there, and I'm going to focus on electives. But you can see there's an economics credit that is required. That we are proposing that we do not require economics. And some of you are saying, well, what about the personal finance piece? And there, you know, I'll get to that. There is a personal finance component to this. 2 humanities credits, that stays the same. The health credit stays the same. We would no longer require a computer education credit. We would no longer require a post-secondary workforce credit. And this slide is a little bit off because it shows post-secondary workforce credit, and there's a 1.0 next to post-secondary, and there's also a 1.0 next to workforce readiness. That's just one, that is 1 credit only. You can see the total credits down there, 17 credits of electives. In the proposed version, if you take away the proposed IKFR1, if you take away a computer ed, and you take away the economics credit, and you take away the post-secondary workforce credit, and we add more graduation credits, required credits for graduation, you can see that a student now has somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 or 19 options. I just titled that personalized choice electives. And so in terms of a student getting the opportunity to choose their learning in the way that makes most sense to them, the things they're excited about, we envision greater student engagement, again, which leads to a higher graduation rate, lower dropout rate, and better performance overall. And that's kind of the idea behind graduation credits and what we're thinking there. Next slide. If you wanted to know this, you might ask yourself, what are kids what are our seniors graduating with? How many credits do they actually earn when they graduate? Well, you can see on average our students are earning across District 11. There's some historical data there, right around 50.9 credits. So in terms of increasing graduation credits, it's not a heavy lift. Furthermore, at Coronado this year, we've been on a block schedule for 3 years. Our seniors are projected on average to earn 56 credits. So that in a true block, they're going to earn more credits. They're going to have more opportunities. And when you factor in CTE and all of the college concurrent enrollment opportunities, I think the future could be bright in a 8-period block schedule. I just want to reiterate that that's happening because we have 8 opportunities in a semester for a kid to earn credit. Next slide. So this slide is going to speak to 2 parts, and one of them is personal finance, and let's stop right there. Going back to what I showed you initially, there are three parts to the graduation requirements. One of which is ICAP. In this new proposal, we would like personal finance to live in ICAP. So now that we have 8 check boxes that kids have to go through, we would add another, and in that next box, we would add the concept of personal finance at any of our high schools. Personal finance could be covered in several different ways. One through our ACE program, another through economics, that's social studies economics, but also business economics. Consumer math has a personal finance component built into it. Capstone project, business finance. So the question is, how does a kid want to learn? What are they most interested in? How do they want to learn personal finance? Why wouldn't we give them options on how they can learn those competencies that surround personal finance? So that's where it would live. It wouldn't live in the graduation requirements. It's just part of ICAP in this proposal. The next piece there is I think at the beginning of this presentation, Claudette and I think Michael talked about 2 years of world language being a requirement, and that's going to take place for our 2028 graduates. There's a little line, a little arrow kind of pointing to it's humanities. It should be humanities. Well, what we know at the high school level is most of it, and I can speak specifically at Coronado, most of our students earn their humanities credits through world languages as it stands. So in terms of a heavy lift on that, not so heavy. I was recently included on an email sent to Director Malpacum from Claudette Murtha, and it was about the D11 World Language Facility. She's a D11 World Language facilitator. She shared some of Palmer's success on the National German exam, and it's just an example of we have a pretty good foundation and good programs for world languages in our high schools as it stands, and this next level lift may not be that heavy, considering that we already have we're not reducing any of our humanities credits for graduation. Next slide. And this is the final slide, and we'll have questions after this. In terms of the rollout plan for personal finance and world language, personal finance literacy requirement we would start talking about establishing eligible courses. I gave you a list just a minute ago. We would talk about the competencies that we need to include in those courses if they're not already there, and we would get a syllabi board approved, train our staff. That would all happen next school year, and then the following school year we could talk about our 11th graders, meaning that personal finance literacy component, and maybe some of our 12th graders, and then by 2025, 2026 school year, all of our 12th graders would, and would be our first graduating class that would have would have that personal finance component. And then you can see after that, we're talking about all graduates and our underclassmen 9 through 10 having access to some of those courses. Well, basically all of our kids are on track at that point in time. Next row down, world language requirement. The planning phase be next school year. We're talking about J1 visas to build capacity for staffing. in 2024, 2025, new hires begin. We start talking and communicating to schools about our ninth graders and that first year world language. And then, 10th grade, you can see year 1 and 2, so on and so forth. And we can build out what it looks like for our 2028 graduates and how they have met that 2-year world language component. And the ask and the request and what we're talking about in terms of that world language is it's 2 consecutive years. So 2 years of Spanish or 2 years of German, 2 years of French as part of that requirement. And that is all I have. What questions do we have concerning these concepts?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to first go to Director Bankus. She had the earlier question, so Director Bankus.
So I can take care of both segments at the same time. I think you've already answered the question about transportation. Did you say that transportation was provided so kids can go from the block schedule to these other opportunities?
Yes.
And then that leads me to, we don't have enough bus drivers. So I don't understand, and maybe you don't either, because how can we anticipate? But the impact is going to be what happens if we can't provide adequate bus transportation becomes a question of equity on how kids are going to get back and forth. The next one was, I'm thinking that when you're in a block schedule, that kids have a greater capacity for forming relationships about content that gives them that opportunity to dive deeper into the subject matter. And I'm wondering if that has any demonstrable effect on better attendance rates. I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, before you ask your third one, because I'm not going to remember.
No, you won't. Yeah.
Let me go to the two. In terms of the busing, think about this. We have pickups and drop-offs at the beginning and the end of the day. There's opportunity in the middle of the day to transport kids, and that's what's happening right now. And
doesn't that impact the availability for field trips?
There are competing priorities that the district is constantly trying to resolve. We feel that we have a strong transportation plan for next year that will position ourselves no longer in crisis mode. I want to applaud Terry, if he's still on the line, and all of his team for the tremendous work they've done, given the limitations that they've had placed upon them this year by both staffing and other challenges that have happened. We have made extreme measures to correct some of those transportation challenges by expanding services that wouldn't be as high a percentage of a normal portfolio, but given the shortage of bus drivers, we've had very little choice to do that. But part of this common schedule conversation is rooted around this ability for us to provide predictability and equity in kids getting access to programs that we cannot replicate at every school. And so, as Darren said, we do provide transportation. I don't believe we've ever had to cancel that midday transportation. And I'm confident that next year we will be at a transportation plus position. But we should always ask ourselves the same question we did on the vacancy thing of, is it a new FTE? We should always ask ourselves, what is the burden on transportation when we make programming decisions? We do not believe that this programming decision adds to that. If anything, I believe it will simplify that, because now we will have everyone on the same common schedule that will allow for, in a very simplistic way, an AM experience at Coronado, a PM experience at Wasson, and then an after-school sports activity back at Coronado. Right now, that's very mismatched in how it is that Wasson can serve in that in-between modular sense, and not just Wasson, any place that isn't the comprehensive high school, because of our inability to match the schedule and the bell times in how it happens. So what you miss at one school as compared to another becomes an inequity. The feedback that I've gotten, and the reason that the high schools have been so strong in this position, is when students come to the Student Advisory Council and we talk about extra opportunities that exist within the district, they say, I would like to participate with that, but my schedule doesn't allow for it. And you just heard Darren so eloquently talk about actually increasing credit opportunities while providing more flexibility for students. We all know that a student who is engaged in their educational journey is much more likely to attend and to succeed. When students have a passive experience, particularly at secondary, where they feel like they have some ability to make a choice, they just choose to not go to school if the school doesn't find the flexibility to finding the way that works for the students. And so much of this is about modernizing secondary experiences for students where they feel as if they are a part of the conversation. I'll switch just very quickly, and he's not on here to receive his accolades, but Sean Norman at Odyssey Echo. When you look at the student population at Odyssey Echo, it is not much different than the student population at most of our other comprehensive high schools. There is a misnomer that only the highest achieving kids select to go to Odyssey Echo. It is the children who know what they want in their educational journey that choose to go to Odyssey Echo. They have intentionality, they have purpose, and they have a support staff that meets them with that desire. Nothing against any of our counselors. They have the hardest job in the district, but a lot of the comprehensive experiences is we tell kids what they need to do in order to meet our graduation requirements. Instead of giving kids an option that says, you have a credit that you can get within a humanities bandwidth, which one is going to be more interesting for you? As soon as a child exercises choice, they then have buy-in, and this has been a financial conversation as well. They have buy-in to the relationship. And so when we were at Coronado for Veterans Day, Darren and I coined the term that secondary is supposed to be about finding your excellence, not being told what to do, but having the exploration and opportunity and the flexibility in the system for you to be able to find your excellence and prepare yourself for college, career, military, technical, whatever it is that you seek to do after graduation. Many of our kids, when you talk to them, ask our 12th graders, what are you doing after graduation? You're going to get a lot of shoulder shrugging. That's a challenge for me as a superintendent. Every kid in February of their senior year should be able to tell you at least what their plan is after graduation. They might not execute that plan because life is hard and a lot of things will happen, but we want our kids armed to know where they are in their educational journey. And much of what Darren has put forward tonight is really focusing that. And what you'll hear next from Valerie is how do we create the triggers that ensure that we just didn't build it, but that we actually carry our kids across the line to get there.
Having said that, and giving kids choice, I also have to say, when we're looking at the course requirements, I have a very difficult time, and I object to the social studies and highly recommending U.S. history. I think U.S. history has to be an integral part of the educational foundation of students who finish our K-12 education. And I think that part is may not be what they choose, but it's going to be the foundation from which they live a productive contribution in our society. It's not covered by American government.
Well, as a follow-up, can you, Principal Smith, say why it has become recommended in the new version?
Yeah, and I'll answer that, and I'll go back to your other question, Director Banks. We still see kids taking U.S. history, but one thing we forget about at the high school is what is their K-8 U.S. history experience? How much U.S. history are they getting? And then, if it is a requirement, does it take away from opportunities for kids to dig deep into other social study subjects? What about thinking creatively about offering specific U.S. history event type classes where they really get to dig deep? So it's highly recommended. We think kids will, the traditional pathway will go in that manner, and we still see kids taking U.S. history. But what I'm hoping to do, and what we've talked about, is how do we open the doors for kids to get really deep into you name it, maybe a class on the Civil War. I mean, just think how creatively it could end up, and in terms of skill building, deep learning, that's kind of the concept, the logic behind that. I'm gonna answer one more of your question. Well, I'm gonna say one thing, answer another question. Back to the busing, as it stands, we haven't had any issues with getting kids to to the Watson campus. There's plenty of room on the bus. There's kids going. What's the opportunity to put more kids on the bus? So I think that current hub transportation that we have is working. And then you also talked about, and actually, Michael, you addressed this, but the increasing attendance. I think when you have opportunities to take classes that make sense to you, you're going to show up. And if we're focusing on things that are relevant are in line with where a kid's at, I absolutely think attendance increases. So
And I would agree with that. I want to get back to American history. When you choose something like the Civil War, which is definitely U.S. history, I've also sat in on classes as a site supervisor for student teachers, where in high school at the senior level, because they've taken all of their others, the class that sticks in my memory is I thought they were teaching about revolution, whether it was in Japan, whether it was in China, wherever. And then, of course, it devolved into skaters against whatever the opposite of a skater is anymore. And that's my concern. I want to make sure that we understand that throughout our history, and we've talked a lot about it when social studies comes up, about the unvarnished truth about America. And I think as the curriculum evolves, that there is social studies and American history is taught better than when I went through it, and it was all about dates and when this was fought and who cares, as long as you knew it was fought, and as long as my terms that you can put the Civil War in the correct portion of the century in which it was fought. So again, I have a difficult time with that. I understand what you've said, but I also think it needs to be a requirement.
Okay.
The other one I'm concerned about is the reasoning behind the physical edge. I understand opening up more opportunities for kids, but I also understand that in America, we have a significant problem with kids not being healthy and not knowing, or being so involved with their phone or their digital access, that they're not getting enough physical activity. As an adult, I go out to try different sports, and it's because I've been exposed to, through my elementary, middle, and high school years, different kinds of sports, different kinds of activities. I may not take up badminton, I may not take up rock climbing, but should I? At least I know the fundamentals, or baseball. So I have a difficulty with that one as well. And there's no, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think in terms of kids taking physical education, what you're going to find out when you go into a PE class, just because they're required to take physical education, are they really getting any physical education if they're choosing not to do what we're asking them to do? And so there is a vision to evolve our PE programs, and some of the things we're doing at Coronado is a great example, between weight training and varsity weight training, yoga. These classes do not have a lack of students. They're booming. We don't have a problem getting kids in there. Remember that in this model, you have more options. A kid would have more options. Some kids will choose to take more PE because it makes sense to them. But the question is, what is the curriculum looking like, and is it evolving, and is it meeting the needs? Is it a lot of and I think team sports is great, or individualized sports, but a traditional 1970 PE program has some evolution we need to think about. And so I guess I say this to assure you that I really believe kids will still take PE. It is still it's still on the books. It's still a class that kids enjoy. But you got to remember, there are a lot of kids that are varsity athletes, that are doing other types of training outside of school. Maybe they're on a weight training team. I mean, and we're still requiring those kids to take PE when they're getting their all kinds of physical fitness elsewhere. And I guess that's my struggle in all of this.
Okay.
Give you insight.
Thank you, Director Loma.
Couple of things. First I'd like to piggyback off Director Bankus. You know, if I ask a high school student right now, you know, why was the USA, United States of America created? They wouldn't give me an answer. They wouldn't know. And see, these are simple things that should be commonplace. And if I would dare you to find a student right now and ask them, hey, why was the USA created? And see, these are very simple, like you're talking about U.S. history, or what were the major obstacles this country faced in history that made us what we are today? Those type of questions should be answered in several classes to get an understanding of who we are. But just to brush it aside, or, you know, and I'm not saying you're brushing it aside, but to me, that's more of a comprehensive a learning experience. Because then you're not tying it to, like Dr. Banking said, you know the date, know the period. No, but those are, okay, yeah, it's good for someone who's very logical, but the reality is, why were we created? Why do we have public education? Why? These are simple things that help develop us as a country that none of our kids know. And so, but that's never considered. I would hope that should be considered. That should be a goal, not just to graduate them. The second thing I've always had this question, and you reminded me, why is it that every high school that I've seen teaches, well, I understand Spanish because we have a border, or we border a Spanish speaking country. I kind of understand German, but I do not understand French. You ever been to France? The French hate Americans. So when I go to France, I speak Spanish, and so they think I'm Spanish and they treat me nice. Once they figure out you're American, they treat you like dirt. So why in the heck are we teaching French? Why not teach something that's more practical and urgent right now, like Mandarin Chinese? You know, $1.5 billion economy, but they're going to be they're a part of all of our future, whether we like it or not. France, thank you for the statue, but they're no part of us. They're not going to affect us either way. Germany, they're too tied to Russia. Oh, good for them. But the country that's going to affect your kids, my grandbaby, is China. So, you know, I don't understand the tradition of French or German. I kind of get Spanish. I like that language. I can speak it. But I've always wondered, why do we do that?
Kim.
And limit ourselves.
Yep. You got it, Principal Smith.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question on the table. I think there's a statement. We certainly want to work with the board as we build out our world languages program. And I think the final item tonight that we bring up will be relevant to world languages. But I'd rather not go down a whole world language conversation of which languages are seen as valuable.
Well, the only
students.
reason I brought it is because he mentioned French and German. So apparently that's something that's
they're just currently there, Director Lowell.
They're currently, yeah.
Okay, well,
they're currently available. There is a demand for it. Our students have asked for it, and so maybe we can expand that to offer Mandarin Chinese too, from what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, that's deep. That's a whole nother work session. But I appreciate you bringing that up, Director Loma.
Okay.
But I want to circle back on one thing, and I'll leave you with this. I do believe there's a concern with U.S. history. I'm hearing that, but please remember, students are still required to take 3 credits. The graduation requirement credits around social studies hasn't changed, and I venture to say that our kids will go through U.S. history. And so I really, even though it's the language you're using is highly recommended versus a requirement, kids are still going to go down that road. Most kids are going to go down that road. There may be a kid that gets that information elsewhere or wants to study something different. Really, that's the way I envision it happening. I don't think it changes much. But again, back to the philosophy, options. It's really back philosophically. If we can give our kids more options, theoretically they engage more in their learning, and increase graduation rate, decrease dropout rate, and You know, that's philosophically the reasoning behind all of this.
Okay. Yeah, the balance that we need to find, how much options that we provide for our kids so that they can engage in their own learning process, but at the same time is a requirement. Director Nelson.
So I would just pose this to you to think about, because I have similar concerns, not just about taking US history as a recommendation versus a requirement, but also economics and computer education. Those seem like really important classes to me that I personally believe should still be requirements. But so maybe we could look at it a little differently of, because I hear what you're saying, maybe a student wants to take a course on the Civil War specifically, and that then qualifies for their US history requirement. So we still provide these extra options to the students, these classes, but that there's that they are able to fall into that category that maybe they weren't before. You know, computer education, is a computer science class going to count towards that? I had somebody text me saying it didn't for their students. So we just open up what is allowed to meet the requirements. We still say we have these requirements, but there's more classes that fall under them.
Yeah, speaking to the computer apps, I'm here. I think that's pretty good insight. You know, and that would be a way we could draw. You know, as we, again, we're talking. Well, this is just talking about concepts, nothing set in stone. But I think that, you know, tying world history, I'm sorry, U.S. history into one of those other classes is a good idea. But in terms of the computer apps, I mean, that's really an outdated class. I mean, computer apps is not the same as computer science class. Computer apps is essentially a credit that was put on the books back in the day when kids needed to learn how to use a computer and learn how to use Word and all the Microsoft products, and they know how to do it. They're doing it throughout all their classes. That's what I would say about that computer apps credit. It's outdated. It's not really on any other districts. I shouldn't say it that way. It's not on other districts that we've looked at. It's not on their books. And I think that I hope maybe that clarifies something for you.
So then I would just say that we need to look at what we're offering and update it. We still have a requirement that computer education is a requirement, but we offer the higher level classes that will count towards that credit if a student has that ability. But if there's a student that you know, doesn't have a computer in the home, they're going to need to learn how to put together a PowerPoint presentation, or maybe their typing skills are behind. So still offering that lower level class to students that need it, and then offering the higher level ones as well, and counting it towards that credit or that requirement. My last question is about the financial piece. Well, I'm pulling up the slide. Personal finance on slide 22. Well, I love that we're adding this as a requirement, and thank you, Director Jorgensen, for this ask and making it a part of our graduation profile. I think that's excellent. I'm just curious if you could explain what ACE is, and then personally, my understanding of what a capstone project is doesn't fall under personal finance. So I'm going to push back a little bit on that and say that it should not count towards that requirement. If you want to put it in as one of the other optional electives or something, that's fine. But I wouldn't count it towards the finance requirement.
Okay.
Well,
thank you. I'm going to jump in 1 minute out here. In the interest of time, we have still another topic to cover. ACE is a topic that, if it is okay, Director Nelson can reach out to you, Principal Smith, or anybody in our school, the executive team, and we can have this conversation offline about ACE. Is that okay with you, Director Nelson?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. If they could give like a 1 minute explanation, I think the community probably is wondering what it is as well. So if you can give just a very high level 1 minute, 30-second.
Well, I can give you 15 seconds, I think. ACE is Alternative Cooperation Education. It's a class that's offered in the high schools that's focused on just, life skills, but also embedded in that is that personal finance component. And so think about, and I'm gonna get to your second question too. Think about in terms of capstone. Think about a board approved syllabi that covers personal finance, and it's a competency based program. It could live in a capstone project because you're going to cover all those pieces. If a kid wanted to study personal finance and do a deep dive into it, and it covered all of those pieces, I think it would potentially fall in the menu. But that ACE is a class. Gave the title of it, and in terms of the it's a 4-year. It can be and is often a 4-year strand that our kids will go through that speaks to all the skills needed for the next level. It is a CTE offering, so it's career and technical education. It falls under that category.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Even the capstone piece, I didn't realize it was going to be finance focused. I was thinking it was like a student has a great interest in science or math and they're doing a capstone project regarding that. But you're saying it's a finance capstone piece.
Yeah, capstone is it can look at what's your interest, you name it, and then we can build a capstone project around it.
Well, that's what I thought that it meant, but then I would say again, it wouldn't fall under the finance umbrella necessarily. So that's all I had.
Can you just kind of summarize here where we have some follow-up opportunities? Because there were a lot of questions. Again, what Darren was briefing tonight was the direction that we're headed. It wasn't meant to be conclusive on the course offerings. We will have our conversations at the non-block schedule buildings with staff. I will work with Deborah on creating community-specific follow-ups to some of the requests I heard as well, to make sure that those non-block schedule schools understand the reason why we're leaning in this direction. But I'd love for Tamara to talk just a little bit about different ways for us to engage on course offerings.
Yeah, sure. That is, great follow-up with the block scheduling so that we hit the big ideas, but we account for any areas of feedback we have. And in terms of how we're opening up, looking at our requirements for courses, the feedback, the draft is to look at opening up opportunities for interests. What we have to recognize is content is really developed, including social studies content, throughout elementary, throughout high school. So it's not just in the course that's taken in high school. Nevertheless, we need to be very cognizant. U.S. history is one of the places we'll go back and look in and ensure that that we're solid in high school to match what is out with what is in place in elementary school and what's required in middle school. So it's a nice continuum all the way through. We hear that loud and clear, and we actually support that. And I think that that's also what Darren was trying to make the connection to from that trajectory of learning in U.S. history. Very, very important. But we'll do that look across all of the courses that we're putting together so that interest development across the K-12 spectrum really comes through. I think personal finance, that's another an area we'll go back into. We've got a nice framework for it with lots of different options. But like we've said in that first planning a year of it, we're looking at what is the common piece we want to see across courses within the syllabus that ensures that kids have personal literacy development, that they've met that competency. And yes, it can be met through a capstone, but to your point, Director Nelson, if that capstone isn't meeting that same criteria, it can't meet the requirement. So lots of continued work here to do. We will take all of this feedback. It's great feedback. I think the big idea is we're moving in a direction that's going to hit goals with AMP, that's going to allow us to look at content and curriculum K-12, and that is going to allow us to do things with students that we haven't been able to traditionally do. So with that, for the great next steps, I'm sorry, was that?
Hang on a minute.
Absolutely.
Director Art, you have your hand up.
Oh, sorry, missed that.
That's all right. Thank you. I appreciate that summary. It is helpful, Tamara. And, you know, as you, well, earlier I mentioned community input, and I've heard, yes, we'll include the staff at the buildings, but again, families and some of that is at the DAC level. I'm sure that Darren didn't just go off and decide things himself. I'm sure he would have had SAC support. And so likewise, as a district, I'd love to have some DAC input. And when it comes to things like changing up the history or not, and some of those courses, it occurs to me part of that community input we get might be from higher education folks. Because if you're college bound, but you don't know that you're supposed to have specifically history, you might miss it. And I realize we have counselors who have got to be on top of that, but just an additional thought that it's one more community or public that we can relate to. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely not baked. Everything you said right on with what we're thinking and moving forward. So I appreciate you vocalizing that and absolutely agree. And with that, we will move it over to our amazing Executive Director of Student Success and Wellness, Valerie Skates, to move us into the infrastructure we have for seeing kids through to on track to graduate, and some of the reporting systems we've got in the works to go ahead and track that success. Valerie?
Thank you, Tamara. So I am so excited about all of this work because this is just another strategy that fits right along with our overall goal of making sure our students are meeting that graduate profile and have a plan for their lives after high school and they're ready for that. And one of the things that our multi-tiered system of supports office in collaboration with our IT department has been working on is building up those school-based teams that are going to be tracking all of this, and then also updating our dashboards. And so if you move to the next slide, we can look at kind of the goals with this, that we want to increase our graduation rates, decrease our dropout rates, and just address any barriers to learning earlier, any barriers to success, and look at what do they need. And so we have individual kind of reviews happening right now in all of our schools. Each school has an MTSS team and they get referrals usually for individual students when someone's struggling. But what we're talking about here is really looking more at systems. When we have large numbers of students who are not meeting, some of those basic indicators, they're not earning enough credits in their freshman year. What are we doing as a system, even before they get to that point of not earning credit, but what are we going to do to intervene and make sure our students are on the right path? And so one of the pieces of that is making sure that all of our schools have a team and the tools that they need. And so Sonia Urban is our MTSS facilitator for secondary and has been meeting with those teams and attending some of the high school principal meetings. And so we are working to get systems on board to intervene earlier and so that we can get students on the path that's going to lead them to success, including looking at opportunity schools earlier, if that's something that's going to better suit their learning needs and for what their path is after high school. If you want to go to the next slide. So these are the indicators that we use when those dashboards are being built out, that we are using this for making sure that we're looking at all those primary things, the ABCs, attendance, behavior, their course of performance. What are our markers as far as those research-based things that have been studied by U Chicago and Johns Hopkins and the Grad Partnership. And there are references in the appendix if you want to see where this research is coming from and what all the work that has been done. There are several schools that have already been doing some of this work through grants, but we're really working on bringing everyone district-wide on board and sharing best practices across the district. So you can see here, probably one of the things that stands out to me here too is that when we have a large number of students who are not meeting that minimum, earning at least 6 credits per semester, you see in that blue column, that's not just for college ready. That means on track to graduate. That's those 2 rows combined. So already, if we have someone in 9th grade first semester that earns less than 6 credits, they're off track. And so if you go to the next, a bubble should pop up here, just saying students on track at the end of freshman year are 3 times more likely to graduate from high school. And if they are off track, then they are more likely to drop out. I mean, that really increases if they are off track. If you go to the next slide, you'll see an example. This is actually an early warning system data dashboard that we had a few, actually before we changed over to PowerSchool. And so we are bringing this back online. And this uses all those indicators that were on that chart that you saw to help schools quickly identify with the click of a button who's falling off track. And so you can do things at the individual level, but you can also look at the data at a systems level. And then this one is actually used in grades 6 through 12. So it's helpful for those middle years and through the high school years. And then the next slide has the on track to graduation dashboard. And this one's a little bit different because it includes those competency demonstrations. And that's one of the things that Tom Hunt and his team is working on very diligently, because if you remember in the graduation requirements chart that Darren showed earlier, there's 11 different ways the students can meet that competency demonstration. And so that data comes from a variety of sources, and getting that all put into a system and having it be accurate is something that Tom is working on. And so these are going to be re-released soon, and Sonia will be working with schools to really dig into this data, as well as Dr. Scott Mendelsberg in the high school principals meetings. And so we have a lot of support on like, how can we reach these students sooner? We're seeing way too many students in later years, 11th and 12th grade, that have very few credits and there's no way they can graduate on time. And so we need to intervene sooner, and we're excited to relaunch this work and dig in more to increase our graduation rates and decrease our dropout rates. I do have Tom Hunt and Sonia Urban here with me as well. So if you have any questions that I can't answer, I think they're still on.
As we transition to questions, I just want to first applaud the team. This is a really cross-functional solution to a problem that is rearing itself very readily for us to see in both an extremely high dropout rate and a low graduation rate, chronic absenteeism, a high number of expulsions. Valerie and I have spent an inordinate amount of time going through the transcripts of students who are expelled, and it is such a clear path to see straight Fs in 9th grade, mostly Fs in 10th grade, and then some behavior that leads to an expulsion in 11th grade. And although students are certainly accountable for their behaviors, the level of predictability of an expulsive behavior due to repeated failure at grade level is a really clear indicator. And so the strongest slide that I think that our team has had to grapple with was, what are those triggers? And I really appreciate all of the teams coming forward with best practice. I have heard that question come up a couple of times, and what has research shown for us to be able to determine when should we be having very important conversations with students and families as early indicators. This is getting kids back on track in their existing school, but it's also an opportunity for us to decide that maybe there's an opportunity academy that provides a better solution for that family instead of another year of repeated failure at a comprehensive high school. There's such interest in this work, it's already bleeding itself into the middle school team, that they're wondering what are the ways that they can program against it. Of course, their grade criteria is slightly different, but this idea of understanding how we can get resources and strategies to students and families sooner to help get all our students on track to success. So I just really wanted to make a cross-functional shout out as the board came into questions, because this is really groundbreaking work for us as a district.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you for all the work that you guys have put into it, a lot of effort, and this is just not, this has been ongoing for the last several months, and this is kind of a culmination when you are coming and presenting it to the board. So thank you for all the effort and the time that you guys are putting into this AMP program. This was comprehensive, but I'm sure it's the amount of work that you guys are putting in, and the board wants to hear the in-depth conversation that's taking place. That's great, but it's also wearing me out, the amount of work that you guys are putting in. And we are like, going into 5-hour board work sessions, trying to understand and learn everything that's happening in our schools and our students. But thank you for that effort. Couple of things I heard, and I appreciate the feedback that came from the board, and Dr. Mendelsberg talked about this, Superintendent Gall talked about it with the block schedule, that we are a willingness to go back to the two schools, Palmer and Doherty, and engage with the staff and get some feedback. But you also talked about the benefits of having to go into a uniform schedule out there with all the schools, so then we can share the resources and the programs and have better opportunities for our students, not only in between schools, but also if they have to go to Pikes Peak State College or some of the other opportunities that exist outside our campuses, that a uniform schedule would help us. And this is something that there is that has come up several times in the past conversations with transportation and aligning with WASN. So it's good to hear that this is going to happen pretty soon, as early as starting next year. But thank you for engaging with the community. And then with the Monday schedule, I have similar concerns which were expressed by, I think, Director Art or somebody, maybe that Monday schedule where they are having 30-minute days. There are opportunities where we can look at what Mitchell is doing. Maybe that's what we need to look at, or maybe that is left to the school level. That's the feedback I have. And the last thing, from what I heard, this provides an opportunity for students who want to use all those 8 block periods. They have a potential to earn as much as 64 credits, if I heard that right. And Principal Smith, correct me if I'm wrong. So a student can earn as much as 64 credits then, much more than what they have the capacity for at this time, which is 56. That's all I had on that. Are there any other closing thoughts or comments about this from the board? Okay, and thank you for including that financial literacy piece too. I think this was a long time coming. Director Jurgensen has talked to me quite a bit about that, and I'm glad that we are incorporating that. And then whenever we make a change to the graduation requirements, that's a policy revision that the board has to adopt. So I do sense some of the reluctance with the board members on the U.S. American history being a recommended option as opposed to a requirement. So this graduation requirements, if it has to circle back to the board and the board has to finally approve that, and if there is not going to be support for that being a recommended piece, maybe we need to have that conversation before it circles back into the board. Okay, seeing none, Superintendent Gall, we are going into our 5th hour, I think. But the good thing is, I saw earlier in the evening that you announced a 2-hour delay tomorrow.
Yes, we did. We still have some work to do to make sure our facilities are safe and ready for learning. The snow has stopped across the region, usually somewhere between 2 and 4. It will be cold. The teams have been out, thanks to Terry and his teams, clearing facilities and making sure the bus yard is ready. But given the cold temperatures in the morning, and we know that the city will struggle to have even primary roads clear, we will go with a 2-hour delay, and we will address that again in the morning if we think that there were any need for a further impact on learning for tomorrow.
Okay, So going for the last conversation that we had, I will turn it over to you, Superintendent Gall. This is about a letter of intent from SELA.
Yeah, I've got Dr. Scott Menelsberg here to just share with folks that we did receive another letter. I'm going to let him talk. You've heard enough of me tonight, so I'm going to go on mute. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Superintendent Gall and board. Very nice to talk to you again this evening. I hope everybody can hear me better. Okay. Yeah, like the superintendent talked about, I'm here to just kind of give some context around SELA. SELA is a K through 5 elementary school focused on foreign language immersion learning. Good news, Director Loma, it's got Mandarin in it and German. I think you were okay with German. Maybe not so great. It's got Spanish. You'll like that. It is offering French, so we did something for everybody. But really, what we're looking for from the board is just to adjust kind of a little bit on a previous timeline for these transfer applications, and want to entertain SELA as a transfer app. We have like the superintendent said, we have a letter of intent to apply. This is stuff we've been working on as a staff for quite some time, these existing strategies. This isn't new. The school, we were talking about it in December, the school is new, but the strategies are the same. I want to make sure that people know that this is all part of the same conversations around strategy and prior conversations, and it fits into our budget build outs from before. Like I was saying, SELA was part of original conversations in December around this. They had a switch in board presidents, going from Cammie Bremer to Beth, and Brad Miller is here from SELA. You all probably know Brad better than you know some of us by now. He's been around a lot. Brad, I can't say Beth's name correctly, but there's been a change in that kind of kept some of their work about trying to apply a little bit behind the times. So anyway, all we're hoping is that that we can move out the timeline for this. We're looking for, we're going to have some time for this, but for the board to maybe bring this up for non-action March 22nd, and then for a resolution on April 12th as an action item. Okay, this gives everybody time. Right now, SELA is still working on and working through the opportunity of applying, but this gives them time. But again, I would just want to reiterate, this is all part of strategies that we've talked about at length with there. It's part of our budget build out. We've had some other opportunities with some other schools that fell through because the DAC and our team and you guys, we've all worked together to say that they weren't right and ready for D11 at this time. I will say that there are some slides there. We're going to turn it over to questions here pretty quick. There are slides attached, a couple things on these slides. The first thing is there, and I've already got this question, I'm sure it'll come up, but we already did get a question about why isn't there math growth data. Dr. Colicky is out of town. I reached out to him today. He's out of town. I reached out to his, some of the people he works with. Tough day to do it, and I reached out late to their credit, but don't have an answer for that. We will get you that answer. And then there's the very last slide on there is one that should not be in there. It was more for our work through, and I did a poor job. I should have gotten that out of there, but it's more confusing than it is anything else. But I wanted everybody to know that it's really just was done for us for background thinking. So there are slides here that we can go through. We're gonna have lots of time, but there's lots of data. And the reason why we wanted to put them up in front of you today is just so that you have time to look through it. We're gonna have lots of time, but to maybe help form some.
I just want to jump in on the data. We're not trying to do a data dive on SELA. We offered the data just to see, as we asked the board to extend the timeline that I set by a month to have their application in before spring break. that we have already looked at their data. Can you progress on the slides, Melissa?
Yeah.
We have looked at their attendance rate. Their drop in attendance is when they went from a middle school to just an elementary school. They had been a combined K-8, and then they made the adjustment. They're stable at 300. You can see their attendance rate. Next slide. And then you can see their performance rate and how it compares to the District 11, because we have asked the board to be looking at achievement, enrollment, and then the niche portfolio. As Dr. Menelsberg commented, SELA was in a very early conversation with us as we talked about transfer opportunities, but due to the change in their board presidency, not that there was a change in their opinion of wanting to apply for a transfer, they just thought it was best to wait for that transfer to happen before they would actually take it to their board. And that letter of intent you have is comes from their board. So the ask is just a simple thumbs up if the board would be willing to accept one last charter transfer application on March 22nd to be considered by the board to be negotiated for next year. There is no obligation to us agreeing to say that they are the school that we would like to bring in as an authorizer, just if we would extend the deadline that I had pushed out as previously being next week, actually, is what I had said.
Okay, thank you. Could you pull down the slide deck so we can look at the board directors? And one follow-up question that I would have automatically to you, Superintendent Gall, or to Dr. Mentelsberg out there, with the timeline that you have established, we are still going to go through a rigorous application process and a vetting process, not only by our own administration, but also our DAC. We have the time to do that. Okay.
That's correct. We've been programming that in, and you can see we're already on the front end of the data. And I do believe having the similar face and representation of Brad Miller there also accommodates for the acceleration. We're dealing with known entities and understand. I think we're also a little better on the process for the lessons we learned through CMA and through James Irwin.
Okay. Board comments or questions on this topic? Do I see anybody? And then you saw what the request or what the ask is from Superintendent Gall, if the board would consider this application at this point in time. Now, we have a set timeline for new charters to go through. They have a deadline when to apply for the school, when to apply to be a part of District 11 and the decision-making process. But I don't think we have an established timeline for existing charters that want to be part of District 11. And maybe that's something that we need to establish going forth in future conversations in a policy.
We agree with that, and we softly have decided that 1 January would be best, so we can be focused in the second semester predominantly on preparing for summer and beyond and budget build. The fact that the scenarios that we had briefed previously to the board on a charter portfolio strategy would still hold true. We're not assuming any new risk from a budgetary perspective, and we're building the budget with that scenario 2 as the cap of where we thought we would go with a charter portfolio strategy for this year.
Okay, I see Director Art hands first. Go ahead.
Thank you. My question does go to the budget and budget building, and if we are considering this in March and April, how does that impact our finance department and their work for next year's budget in a timely fashion?
I'll let Chris Odom comment on that, because I think I've already stated that we're prepared to absorb any of those changes, but I'll let Chris comment on if she feels it's an extension of a risk in any way.
Thank you, Superintendent Gull. Can you hear me, Director Ott? Okay, good. Thank you for the feedback. We have been, since this topic came up a while back, been in close coordination with Superintendent Gull to make sure we have the right, that we've been planning 700 students for our budget build, both from a general fund and a MLO impact. So that is in Laura Hronik's scenario build right now. Does that answer your question or concern, Director Ott?
It's interesting that that's the anticipated number, given that this, well, it's fairly new to us, but I think so. My concern is that, yes, she's able to accommodate changes in the budget and, based on our decision. And if it were May, obviously it would be a different story. I'm just hoping that March and April gives her enough time, because she's not alone in that, obviously. But thank you. I think that'll do it.
I just, as a follow-up, we had agreed, we had presented several different budget build scenarios to the board, and we had used scenario 2 based upon feedback of the board. So this is not a predetermined amount on my end. This is a conversation that we had earlier with SELA, and they were not prepared at that time for a transfer application. We presented scenarios that included over 1,000 students that we thought we could actually absorb. And due to the feedback from the board, we felt that it was best to stay with scenario 2. If the board's decision is to not move forward with this transfer application, we're not going back out and looking for another magical 300 children. This is a conversation that started well before Christmas. SELA asked that we not make this a public conversation because they needed to manage it with their board, and we respected that. Matter of fact, Tamara and I had gone over there for a visit, and I think I wore this shirt that day, and that caused all kinds of ripples. Because as you can imagine, these are two-way conversations. This is not just what it is that works for our board. This is what works for their board as well. And so we have been managing the right time to negotiate or consider a transfer application from SELA for several months, and we just have not brought that to public's attention based upon a request from their board. They have sent the letter of intent, which is what brings us here today.
Okay, any further thoughts or questions on this? We will have a deep dive on SELA itself if the board chooses to go in that direction. So right now, we just need a thumbs up to show if the board is willing to go with the deadline or the timeline that Superintendent Gall established. Okay. So you have the thumbs up, and so but with the understanding that I know that the timeline is short, we do want a rigorous review of the school. So all the checks and parameters, the boxes, making sure that they are operationally sound, financially sound, and also academic data you already pulled up, and the feedback that we always receive also from the board that their community is also interested in wanting to be part of District 11.
Yeah, I was invited to a virtual town hall for SELA last week for their community members, and when they come forward with their application, if they choose to do so, I'll let them talk about the feedback that they received from their community.
Okay. So since Mr. Miller is also joining us, is there anything you want to add, Mr. Miller, before we wrap up this conversation?
Thank you for the opportunity. No, I don't think I have anything substantive to submit other than I know that we've worked thoughtfully on the SELA side to consider whether we've got the resources and the intentionality to really seriously approach this, and at this point we absolutely do. So we will bring a thorough and thoughtful application and proposal to you.
Okay, thank you. I guess that wraps up the conversation on this subject matter. Anything you want to add from your side, Superintendent Gall, to wrap up this conversation?
No, what a wonderful Wednesday evening to share with you all again in virtual land. We appreciate the board's support on all the initiatives and priorities we brought forward. I know we have some follow-up, and we look forward to having that with you.
Okay, and at least we don't have to drive back to our homes now. All of us are in our own homes. So thank you for that, and thank you for all the board members for joining us. Just a the board, that we do have the employee group meeting on February 21st. That would be next Tuesday. 20th is President's Day. Right now, 21st is when we are scheduled to meet with employee groups at the Tesla building. Right now, I think that the meeting is scheduled at 4 o'clock. Between 4 and 6:30, it's dinner with them. Same as before, we've invited all three employee groups and representation from each of those three employee groups to join with us. And then Wednesday, we have our regular board meeting, hopefully in person. Who knows with the weather conditions. Okay, seeing with that information, thank you all for joining. Thank you for taking the time for a long work session today, and have a good night, and we will see you next time.